Chapter 3362. After returning home that day, Mu Jingyang taught this woman a lesson. Thinking that today was the old master's birthday banquet, he gave Madame Hua some face and did not slap her face at this moment. He was extremely regretful. If he had known this would happen, he would have smashed her face and made her stay in the house. That way, she would not have embarrassed the family in front of so many people and made him lose so much face. Fifth sister-in-law, are you still not telling the truth? Mu Dongni scolded, where did you take my 1 million yuan? Madame Hua covered her face and sobbed, looking somewhat pitiful. Mu Dongni angrily pounded the table and pursed her lips, whispering, what are you crying for? Can crying help? Hurry up and explain everything clearly. Why did the steward of the pink house say that you owe someone money? How much do you owe? Madame Hua stammered as she explained the matter. It turned out that the two brats of the fifth branch owed someone hundreds of thousands of spirit coins while drinking wine at the pink house. When the fifth branch's wife, who was already struggling to make ends meet, learned of this matter, it was as if a thunderbolt had struck her on a sunny day. In order to pay off the debt, she gritted her teeth and tightened her belt to pay off half of it, but in the end, she could not pay off the other half. If she also paid off the other half, the fifth branch could only starve for half a year. Thus, without any other choice, Madame Hua gritted her teeth and borrowed money from the pink house to pay off the previous debt and slowly pay off the new one. As a result, the interest accumulated like a snowball. The principal and interest rolled bigger and bigger until the hole could not be filled. Mu Jingyang was dumbfounded. He turned his head and glared fiercely at his two timid sons. So the root of this disaster was with these two bastards. Because the fifth branch's wife had no children of her own, she had always raised these two bastards as her own. Madame Hua had always doted on her children, so when something happened, her first reaction was not to find Mu Jingyang to solve it, but to think of a way to fill the hole that the two children had made. No wonder those two bastards were crying like that while hugging their mother yesterday. It turned out that it was because of their guilt. Mu Jingyang also felt a little guilty. When he hit his wife yesterday, he did not show any mercy, but now, he regretted it. These two rascals, see if I don't beat them to death. Seeing that Mu Jingyang was about to explode, Hua Shi hurriedly went forward to pull him back. Mu Jingyang shook off Hua Shi's hand and rushed to the two brats, wanting to give them a good beating. Mu Wuzi hugged his younger brother, who was 1 year younger than him. The two of them tried to hide under the table. Old Master Mu was speechless as he watched the farce. He couldn't help but yell, "Stop it!" At this moment, Madame Hua hurriedly stepped forward and grabbed Mu Jingyang's hand. She whispered, "Husband, don't hit the child here." Steward Li of the pink house laughed twice and said with a smile, "That's right, that's right. Fifth Lord, if you want to teach the child a lesson, you can do it when you go back. But for now, let's settle the debt first, lest we make things difficult for the little ones." Arbor looked at Hua Shi as if he was looking at a weirdo. Could it be that the money for the horse that day was borrowed from this pink house? Hua Shi nodded with a sullen face. If she didn't borrow it, where would she get the money to pay the little crown princess? Mu Dongni's 1 million spirit coins was only a fraction of the total. Steward Li came to collect the 30 million spirit coins, but she wasn't sure if that was all. Chapter 3363. The young crown princess nods and turns to Manager Li, "Are you here to collect the debt?" Manager Li sees her luxurious clothes and exquisite face, so he doesn't dare to act rashly. He quickly smiles and nods, "We've made a fool of ourselves. The main thing is that it's only the beginning of the year and business isn't good. Our pink house is also in urgent need of cash flow." The young crown princess nods to express her understanding, then says expressionlessly, "But you brought people here to cause a ruckus at the old man's birthday banquet, that's not right." Manager Li smiles apologetically again, I'm sorry, we didn't consider it well. Hee, I hope everyone can understand. The young crown princess raises her eyes and asks, how much does the fifth madam owe you? 30 million. How could that be? Manager Lee says with a smile, the fifth madam has borrowed nearly 20 million spirit coins from us, and now the repayment is 61 million spirit coins. The guests look at each other in dismay. From time to time, there are whispers from below, saying that the pink house's interest rate is a bit too high. This interest rate isn't high. Manager Lee says again, we only lent it to the fifth madam because she's one of us. Otherwise, if it was someone we're not familiar with, we wouldn't have lent it to her. Arbor smirks, this isn't high. Business is so good. How long has she borrowed it? It's been at least half a year. In half a year, 20 million has become 60 million. Arbor looks at Manager Lee playfully, you really know how to do business. Manager Lee smiles apologetically and says that he doesn't dare. His eyes secretly size up Arbor's face, estimating this girl's identity in his heart. Behind him, Scarface becomes impatient and roars, why are you asking so much? Are you going to pay the debt? Damn Scarface, how can you be so rude to this girl? Manager Lee's reprimand doesn't have much sincerity. Everyone at the banquet inexplicably tightens their bodies and turns their eyes to Scarface, looking at him as if he's a corpse. Scarface is baffled by everyone's looks, he doesn't understand why these people are looking at him with such strange eyes. He lowered his head and looked at himself. He didn't see anything eye-catching about him. Then, he raised his head and said, did you hear what our masterly said? Stop talking nonsense. Take out the money and we'll leave immediately. Grandpa Moo was so angry that his face turned ashen. He glared at his son, Mu Jingyang, who lowered his head in shame. It was his fault for not properly disciplining his two sons. He even sent people to chase after the debt and slapped him in the face in front of all the guests. It was really humiliating. Today is the Mu family's banquet. Forgive us for not receiving unimportant people, Mu Jingfeng coldly said. If there's anything, you can talk about it tomorrow. Scarface's face was full of anger. It's only right and proper to pay back what you owe. Previously, the crown princess even went around the capital to collect debts. At that time, I didn't see you aristocratic families making excuses and refusing to pay. Don't you dare refuse to pay us back just because we, the Pink House, are of low status and insufficient background. Everyone was dumbfounded and looked at Scarface as if they were looking at a sausage. Does this guy know that the person standing in front of him is the crown princess he's talking about? Could it be that this guy still thinks that he's following the little crown princess blindly? Arbor frowned and unhurriedly said, where are the crown princess personal guards? Everyone's lips twitched fiercely. Mo Lien stood up. She wanted to laugh but held it in. Chapter 3364. 7 or 8 purple forest guards darted out from behind. Without waiting for the little crown princess's order, they pounced on them and caught Steward Lee and Scarface in a few moves. Both of them were forced to kneel on the ground with their arms tied behind their backs. Everyone wanted to laugh, but they didn't dare to laugh out loud. Was there something wrong with that scarred face's brain? He actually dared to act so arrogantly in front of the young crown prince consort. He even said that he was learning from the little crown princess and going to the Mu family to collect debts. He even freaking felt that it was only right for her to do so. How could they be the same? It was only right for the little crown princess to collect debts, but it didn't mean that these two could also come to the Mu family to slap their faces. Arbor looked expressionlessly at the two kneeling on the ground and said coldly, tell your master to come and talk in person. Now, scram. Hey, how could you do this? Scarface stiffened his neck and wanted to yell, but Steward Lee hurriedly struggled over and flicked his head on Scarface's head. Was this idiot deaf or something? Didn't he hear the little girl in front of him call herself the Crown Princess? This was the little Crown Princess with the stoic face that was widely rumored in Dragon Flame City recently. No wonder he felt a little flustered just now. It was because he was facing this stoic face. Stuart Lee turned around and smiled apologetically at Arbor, revealing a few yellow front teeth. Crown Princess, please forgive us. Crown Princess, please forgive us. We didn't mean to disturb you. Ha! What the hell? Didn't they say that the Crown Princess and the Moo family had a strained relationship? Why would the Crown Princess come to old Master Moo's birthday banquet in person? How was this a strained relationship? We'll leave now, we'll leave now. Stuart Lee grabbed Scarface and turned around, wanting to slip away. Unexpectedly, the young Crown Prince Consort said coldly from behind them, "Hold on. You want to leave just like that?" Stuart Lee was baffled, and his heart skipped a beat. He hurriedly turned around and smiled awkwardly. "Crown Princess, do you have any other orders?" "You two suddenly barged in and disrupted my eating mood." Arbor glanced at them coldly. Compensation. All the family heads present, whether it was the Moo family head, the Long family head, or the Goo family head, could not help but feel their eyelids twitch slightly. Because the word compensation was too fucking frightening. They hadn't forgotten that the young Crown Prince Consort had formed a debt collection team a while ago. Every day, she would lead the team to knock on doors and collect reparations. They didn't know why, but they felt their hearts is, and it was very, 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 for some reason. When she saw the two fools from Funlu being dissed by the Crown Princess and being asked for compensation by the Crown Princess, she actually felt slightly pleased. "You two, use, your, is. You." Ha ha ha. Old Master Duan couldn't resist laughing. Compensation is good, compensation is good. This old man's drinking mood has also been disrupted. Compensation indeed, compensation. Stuart Lee couldn't resist sweating. Crown Princess, this lowly 1 million spirit coins, pay up and scram. The little Crown Princess's crisp voice resounded above the residents. Fifth young Master Qin couldn't resist rolling his eyes. This fellow really was a money grubber. She clearly opened her eyes at the sight of money, but she still pretended in front of him last time. Stuart Lee's eyes nearly popped out, and he almost exclaimed, "Are you crazy?" The little Crown Princess glanced at him coldly. "If you don't want to pay, then give me your life. What do you want?" Chapter 3365. Scarface panicked. "How can you be so unreasonable? Husband." The young Crown Prince Consort shot up with a displeased expression on her face. Look, the people and matters that his Jojo was too lazy to deal with were conventionally summoned to her husband. Mo Lien inwardly found it funny as he walked over. He lightly coughed and reached out to grab her little hand, giving her a "leave it to your husband" look. When he turned to look at Manager Lee and Scarface, his face instantly sank. This Crown Prince has never needed to reason with anyone. "Everyone, take them away." Don't. Manager Lee jumped in fright and hurriedly said, we'll pay. "But we don't have that many spirit coins on us right now." The little Crown Princess waved her hand and Kai Xiao held back her laughter as she hurriedly handed her Crown Princess a pen and paper. "Right." Arbor impatiently waved his hand. "A debt of 1 million spirit coins, 5% interest for 2 hours." The little Crown Princess coldly said, "Write it clearly." "What? 5% interest for 2 hours? 2 hours? Can you be any more fucking deceitful?" Seeing Manager Lee standing there with a green face and not moving for a long time, the little Crown Princess unhappily pulled Mo Lien's sleeve. "Take them away." Mo Lien was even more impatient and couldn't be bothered to argue with the two in front of him. Coming to disturb his JoJo's meal, they deserved to die. It looked like they were really going to be dragged away and beaten to death. Manager Lee didn't dare to hesitate and quickly signed the IOU, even paying the money. The young Crown Prince Consort took it and looked around before saying with a nod, "Scram." Manager Lee and Scarface were given the cold shoulder and didn't dare to continue staying here. They shrunk their necks and ran away with their tails between their legs. Arbor indifferently glanced at the purple forest guard behind him. "Go guard outside. I don't want to see anyone from Pink House for 5 days." Everyone was dumbfounded. No, it wasn't. What did the Crown Princess mean? Was he going to collect the debt from the pink brothel after compounding the interest of this 1 million yuan? Yes, that's what it meant. After all, the Crown Princess gave him a 5% profit for every 2 hours. 50 days and 60 hours. That would be pushing Fun Lu to the brink of death. Blood pit. Everyone looked at the little Crown Princess in shock. Then, they silently picked up the bowls in front of them and pretended that they were eating happily. Grandpa Mu coughs and repeats his opening speech. Then, he asks everyone to pick up their chopsticks. As the sound of cups and plates rang out, the originally deathly silent atmosphere began to slowly recover as if spring had returned to the earth. Madame Hua of the 5th branch hung her head like a defeated rooster. She ate absent-mindedly. After toasting for a while, the atmosphere finally became lively again. Gradually, people began to joke and chat with each other. The MC hosting the banquet trembled in fear for a while. Now, he finally regained some of his smile and remembered that he was about to start the process. Thus, he said, the descendants will come forward to present their gifts. This was basically the same process every year. It was also the time for the branches to display their strength and wealth. But this time, the Crown Prince and his wife were present. Naturally, according to etiquette, the Crown Prince and his wife were the first to present their gifts. The two stood up from their seats and walked to a corner. They bowed to Grandpa Mu and said, "I wish Grandpa Mu happiness and longevity." The little Crown Princess casually took out an exquisite palm-sized box from her inner world and handed it over. What kind of gift can such a small box contain? Mu Ro Yen muttered and pursed her lips. Chapter 3366. However, she didn't dare to say it out loud and only mumbled it in her throat. The others naturally craned their necks to look curiously. They all wanted to see what was inside the small box that the Crown Princess presented. The noble ladies, who had experienced several calamities in succession, were all very well behaved at this moment. None of them dared to make a sound or make up stories, but there was a hint of curiosity in their eyes. What kind of rare treasure could such a small box contain? Old Master Mu chuckled as he reached out to take the small box. This small box was tightly sealed. From the outside, nothing could be seen. Not even a trace of smell leaked out. Old Master Mu held the box in his hand and appeared very happy. He nodded repeatedly and said, "Good, good. You're considerate." Before he could finish his sentence, Mu Rochuan quickly walked up and bowed. "Grandfather, granddaughter presents a mechanism diagram of hundreds and thousands of children and grandchildren. This diagram contains 3 different formations that can withstand a fatal attack at a critical moment." After saying that, she clapped her hands. Immediately, someone carried a mechanism diagram that looked like a screen over and placed it on the ground. A complete mechanism diagram appeared in front of everyone. Many young boys and girls were drawn on the formation diagram. Every one of them had different expressions, and their eyes shone brightly. At first glance, it looked densely packed and somewhat terrifying. Arbor took 2 steps back and grabbed Mo Lien's finger. Mo Lien also grabbed her little hand and nodded at Old Master Mu. He held his little wife's hand and wanted to return to the banquet. Unexpectedly, Mu Rochuan turned to look at them and said indifferently, "Since it's a gift, we naturally have to present it to everyone. For example, the fifth branch's jade Buddha hand." Mu Rochuan pointed at the jade Buddha hand that the fifth branch's madam ordered people to bring up, then pointed at the gifts from the other branches. "And our mechanism diagram. Those are all things that everyone can admire." The fifth branch's madam stood there awkwardly and didn't make a sound. In order to buy this jade Buddha hand, she had borrowed money from Fun Lu. It really wasn't worth praising. Arbor frowned and looked up at Mu Rochuan. Mu Xingchen had already stepped forward and glanced at Mu Rochuan with an unperturbed expression. "Rochuan, step back." Mu Rochuan stood in front of the guests with a cold expression and did not retreat. She said with an indifferent expression, "How can people appreciate something in a box?" Mu Jingshua, who was ordering people to carry a box that was as tall as a person forward, let out a few muffled coughs. He swept a glance at Mu Rochuan and snapped, "You're meddling too much. Why do you care what other people give you? You can leave after you're done. My gift is also in the box. Who made the rule that gifts must be opened in public?" Bah! Mu Rochuan curled her lips coldly. "You don't dare to open it in a box. How could he let everyone appreciate it?" "Sixth uncle, do you think I'm wrong? Then give me a reason to convince me." Mu Jingzhuang was fuming. He waved his fan carelessly and sneered, "I'm your sixth uncle. Don't be rude. Back off." Mu Rochuan did not move a single step. Old Master Mu couldn't help but frown. Just as he was about to mediate, he heard Mu Rochuan say, "Come, open the gift." This time, Mu Jingzhuang jumped up. He watched as 2 or 3 servants ran up to him and began to open his big box. He angrily pointed his folding fan at Mu Rochuan and angrily said, You. Chapter 3367. Was there something wrong with Mu Rochuan? In the past, she was well-educated, well-mannered, gentle, and elegant. She looked like a well-bred young miss from a wealthy family and looked pretty good in every way. But looking at her today, she simply looked repulsive and crazy. Why did she open his box for no reason? What did this have to do with her? Mu Jingzhuang's face was ashen. He wanted to chase those servants away but was unexpectedly stopped by Mu Rochuan. "Sixth uncle, don't be anxious. It'll be quick," Mu Rochuan said mildly. Mu Jingzhuang was simply furious. Who said it would be quick? He didn't want anyone to touch his gift box at all right? The more he looked at her, the more she looked like someone with something wrong with her head. Mu Jingzhuang forcefully pushed Mu Rochuan away and said angrily, "Get out of my way. Don't block the way." Mu Rochuan looked at him coldly and blocked his path from beginning to end. Meanwhile, those nimble servants had already opened Mu Jingzhuang's big box. Everyone thought they would see some peerless treasure, but in the end it was still a box. Mu Jingzhuang's expression became slightly unnatural, but the others didn't notice. They only felt that this sixth Master Mu was really considerate. The packaging was so good, and he actually made a double-layered box. Everyone's originally craned necks moved slightly, and they all sat up properly. Those servants who were opening the gift box were also stunned, and they immediately turned to look in eldest Miss's direction. Mu Rochuan nodded at them again, and the servants nimbly started to open the box again. "Mu Rochuan, don't go overboard." Mu Jingzhuang looked at her angrily, and he couldn't help but feel anxious inwardly. In the past, when the old master received gifts, he would directly order people to lock them up in the storeroom. Who would have thought that this would happen today? Those disciples from the branch families also looked at each other with slightly flustered expressions, inwardly blaming Mu Rochuan, this willful eldest miss, for being meddlesome. Why did she choose to open the gift box in front of all the guests? Although everyone would do their best to prepare gifts for the old master's birthday every year to please him, the branch families weren't strong enough. Naturally, they weren't as wealthy as the direct descendants. Everyone was well aware of these matters. As long as the intention was there, it was done. In the past, most of the gifts were kept in boxes, and there was never any mention of opening the boxes in public. This made most of the disciples of the cadet branches, who were short on money and wanted to put on a front, think of a good idea. He spent a small sum of money to buy a box that looked very exquisite. As for the gift, he didn't care. After all, the old man didn't lack anything. She would decorate the store nicely and store everything in the storeroom. The old man probably wouldn't even bother to open the boxes. This had been a tradition for many years, and it had never failed. Moreover, the old man's birthday banquet was held once a year. If they had to spend a lot of money to prepare gifts every time, then they would become poorer year by year, unable to maintain his composure. Mu Jingzhuang bellowed, "Get out of my way, Mu Rochuan." He now had the urge to beat Mu Rochuan to death. This woman was such a busybody. The old master didn't even say that he wanted to open the present in front of them, yet she was the only one who kept making a fuss. She made everyone break out in a cold sweat. Was she happy? Was she happy? Mu Jingzhuang wanted to give this woman a slap to wake her up. Just now, the fifth branch made a fool of themselves. Now, it was his turn. Could it be that she would look good if the Mu family made a fool of themselves? Mu Jingzhuang's expression instantly darkened. He tugged at Mu Rochuan twice, but unfortunately, he didn't manage to pull her away. Chapter 3368. At this moment, the servants who were opening the boxes let out astonished gasps. It was indeed a gasp. After opening the second box, they discovered that there was another box inside. This time, everyone's gazes towards Mu Jingzhuang became somewhat ruminative. Mu Jingzhuang himself was so embarrassed that he wanted to escape immediately. Actually, he had spent 100 spirit coins to buy that big box outside. He did not expect that his niece would catch him red-handed the first time he did this business. Old Master Mu sat on the main seat. Although he did not say anything, the corners of his mouth twitched harshly twice. Mu Jingfeng coughed uncomfortably and said, "Father, I think it's getting late. We can start the family competition now." Right. Family competition, let's start the family competition. Mu Jingzhuang hastily agreed, truly wanting Mu Rochuan to stop. Mu Rochuan, however, was unrelenting. She raised her hand and said to the group of servants who had been arranged beforehand, "Why aren't you taking out 6 master's things? Useless things, you're taking so long to open a gift box. And those, take them all out." As Mu Rochuan's fingertips swiped across, the expressions of the disciples from the side branches became incomparably fascinating. Naturally, all of the guests were whispering to each other in hushed tones. No one was a fool. At this moment, they finally realized that this eldest miss of the Mu family was deliberately looking for trouble. However, this eldest miss usually appeared to be very sensible. Why would she do something so embarrassing today? It could even be said that it was extremely impolite. Seriously, they had seen a ghost. Today's events were truly endless. Family Headlong also reacted at this moment. He said with a smile, "Eldest Miss is truly an honest person. I wonder what gift this 6th master of the Mu family presented to Old Master. A big box inside a small box. This must be the best of the best. Otherwise, why would he need to wrap it up so carefully?" Matriarch Mu, she knew her son very well. This fellow was most likely going to make a fool of himself today. Mu Jingzhuang hastily rushed forward and wanted to kick those servants away, but Mu Rochuan reached out to stop him. "6th uncle, why are you so nervous? Could it be that you've given Grandpa an unworthy gift? You're Grandpa's son. It's one thing to see those disciples from the side branches fooling around, but you couldn't have learned from them and deliberately made a fake gift to fool Grandpa, right? Mu Jingzhuang, old Master Mu, was speechless. He hurriedly said, "It doesn't matter whether they are polite or not. The main purpose of this birthday banquet is to test the cultivation ability of the disciples in the family. In addition, it is to let everyone gather together at the same time to promote the relationship between the clansmen." Old Master Mu spoke with great emotion, and the clansmen all lowered their heads in shame. After a while, Mu Jingzhuang's gift box was finally opened. Everyone counted and found that 6th Master Mu had a total of 16 boxes. Finally, he took out a small black jar. When he opened it, it was actually a handful of black soil. Everyone was speechless. "Big brother, you're fucking cheating me." Old Master Mu's expression could no longer remain calm. He jumped up from the stool with a whoosh and lifted his leg to kick Mu Jingzhuang's butt. This son of a bitch, did he want his father to be buried as soon as possible so that he could rest in peace? It was obvious that the soil was from the backyard of the house. Chapter 3369. Mo Lian was secretly amused. He pulled his wife's hand and dodged to the side. Suddenly, he noticed that the little fellow had lowered her head and her shoulders were trembling slightly. His heart skipped a beat and he quickly bent down to look at her little face. He saw that the little fellow's eyes were curved into crescents as she pursed her lips and snickered. Mo Lian was immediately amused. He raised his hand to pat his wife's head and whispered, "Jojo, it's okay. It's okay to laugh out loud because right now, everyone was laughing." Mu Jingshua swiftly dodged his father's kicks and made a series of escape movements in one go. When old Master Mu looked up again, the son of a bitch had already run into the crowd and was out of reach. "You're too much of a scammer. You just grabbed a handful of soil from your own backyard and gave it to your father without spending a single cent." Little did they know that 6th Master Mu had spent some money on the beautiful box. The guests couldn't help but laugh. Seeing old Master Mu's ugly expression, they tried hard to hold back their laughter, but it was so damn difficult. Long Shoshin laughed and said, "6th Master Mu is indeed a man of character. Ha 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 ha." At this time, the gifts from the side branches had also been opened. Each gift was weirder and cheaper than the last. Someone actually gave old Master Mu a cheap silver bracelet. They were sure that old Master Mu would throw the gifts into the storage room every year and never count them. Old Master Mu sighed and said, "I used to tell you not to give gifts. In the end, all of you said that I can't do that. How can I not give gifts on my birthday?" Old Master Mu sounded a little helpless. "In the end, you put on a facade every year. You didn't give me gifts to celebrate my birthday, but in fact, it became a competition between all of you. I thought about it. Since that's the case, I might as well treat all of you equally. I won't open the gifts and put them in the storage room first. When you need them after you get married, I'll open the storage room and return them to you." Fortunately, none of the descendants in the family had gotten married in the past 2 years, right? Otherwise, the old man would have fainted on the spot from anger if he had opened the box and found all these crooked pieces of trash. Now, in order to save money and keep up appearances, all of you have learned to work hard on the gift boxes. It must have taken a lot of effort to find all these exquisite and beautiful boxes, right? Maybe you have to pay for it. Grandpa Mu's eyes widened. Everyone was speechless, not knowing what to say. The sour feeling of being exposed in public was really indescribable. It was one thing for her to feel guilty towards her grandfather, but she also hated Mu Rochuan to the core. This Mu family's eldest miss was indeed a good-for-nothing. "It's fine if you're otherworldly, but now you're trying to ruin our show. If you can't stand the side branches deceiving the old master, can't you secretly warn them? Why did he have to do this when the house was full of guests? Now that things had turned out like this, everyone's faces had been tarnished. Was this young miss in a good mood? Mu Qingya was a smart girl. She knew that her daughter had offended everyone in the clan with what she did today. How could he not understand the ways of the world? She tightened her grip on the handkerchief in her hand and was about to walk forward when she heard Mu Rochuan say, "There's still a box that hasn't been opened." Everyone's gaze followed her finger and landed on old Master Mu's hand. It was the small brocade box that the Crown Princess had handed over. Everyone silently glanced at eldest Miss Mu and secretly shook their heads. Chapter 3370. This Missy really couldn't keep her cool. Missy had done so much, but her target was actually the Crown Princess, right? The people from the side branches were even angrier. So, after all that, they were merely the guiding stones. Her real target was the Crown Princess. In the end, they, the cannon fodder, had become the Missy's sacrificial lambs. Everyone's gaze toward Mu Rochuan turned unfriendly. Seeing this, Mu Qingya's heart skipped a beat, and she hurriedly walked up to berate her. "Rochuan, stop fooling around. This foolish daughter of his. Could she not tell that everyone in the clan had become very unfriendly towards her? This matter was truly unsightly." As a junior, she was giving orders in front of old Master Mu, insisting that others open the gift box. How could old Master Mu like her when she didn't see the big picture? Mu Qingya was vexed. How did a tactful person like her raise such an unreasonable daughter? Mu Rochuan turned a deaf ear to Mu Qingya's words. She only looked at the box in old Master Mu's hand with a mocking gaze. Grandpa, old Master Mu's face darkened. "Open it or not, it's up to me. Leave." After fooling around for so long, the atmosphere finally turned good, but at this moment, it was stifling again. Old Master Mu felt very stifled. Was it easy to organize a birthday banquet? But, Grandpa. Mu Rochuan wanted to say more, but old Master Mu glared at her. Mu Jingfeng berated, "All right, all of you leave. Those who passed the preliminaries yesterday, go prepare for the clan competition." Mu Rochuan clenched her fists and resentfully took a step back, her gaze fixed on Arbor. Arbor casually glanced back at her and suddenly said, "You want to see what I gave old Master so much?" Mu Rochuan pursed her lips and didn't say anything, looking at him provocatively. Qiao Mu sized her up. "Let's make a bet." Old Master Mu's eyelids twitched inexplicably. He was about to remind Mu Rochuan, this pitiful granddaughter of his, when he heard her speak. "Bet on what?" "I bet that my gift is the most valuable present. No amount of money could buy it, and it wasn't sold on the black market either. If I win, you have to give me your spatial ring. If you win, you can name any conditions you want." Arbor tilted his head and said indifferently. Mu Rochuan's gaze instantly became incomparably sharp. "All right, Rochuan, don't mess around." Mu Qingya interrupted her daughter and turned to smile at Arbor. She said gently, "Crown Princess, Rochuan doesn't know any better. Don't hold it against her." The items that the Crown Princess sold were naturally peerless and priceless. "I hope that the Crown Princess will not joke with Rochuan." The little Crown Princess stared at Mu Qingya coldly for a long time until Mu Qingya lowered her head. Then, she slowly said, "You can't afford to play." Anger flashed in Mu Rochuan's eyes. Just as she was about to take a step forward to speak, she felt her fingers tighten. Looking down, she saw that her mother was holding her hand tightly. "Humph," the little Crown Princess snorted coldly and her gaze circled Mu Qingya. With this sly woman around, she wouldn't be able to trick her daughter today. "If you can't afford to play, then don't talk nonsense." Arbor turned and walked back to his seat, showing no intention of revealing the item in the brocade box. Chapter 3371. Fine. I'll bet with you. She hadn't even taken 2 steps when she heard Mu Rochuan's shout from behind. Mu Rochuan retracted her hand and forcefully pushed Mu Qingya away. She used so much force that Mu Qingya almost fell to the ground. Fortunately, Zhonglu reacted quickly and supported First Madam. When she raised her head and saw that First Madam's face was slightly pale, she couldn't help but be shocked and angry. "Eldest Miss, how can you treat First Madam like this?" Arbor turned around and his gaze indifferently fell on Mu Rochuan. He raised a finger and lightly shook it. "Don't regret it." Mu Rochuan sneered. "Such a small box, I'm guessing it's a pill." Even if this girl knew how to refine pills since she was in her mother's womb, she probably couldn't refine any exceptional pills at such a young age. Since that was the case, how could a mere pill compare to the mechanism diagram she presented? "It's a pill." Arbor nodded. "You guessed correctly. Sir, before you open the box, you should set up a defensive barrier first." Xiao Mu reminded faintly. Mu Zong had no choice but to sigh and glance at Mu Rochuan before flipping his hand to open the small brocade box. In an instant, a beam of light rushed out from the brocade box, followed by a round pill. It seemed to be alive as it jumped out with a whoosh and fled in a panic. A trace of excitement flitted through the old man's eyes. When this pill jumped out, a strange fragrance filled the air and instantly covered the entire banquet area. It was too inconceivable. Fortunately, he listened to his granddaughter's words and laid down a defensive barrier in advance. Otherwise, this pill would have flown away. The old man laughed heartily and stretched out his hand to pinch that pill with 2 fingers. That pill moved slightly in his hand, then immediately stilled and surrendered. Ha 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 ha. The old man's sonorous laughter jolted everyone back to their senses. Family head Qin jumped up, his voice trembling with excitement. He widened his eyes in disbelief. Black-veined pill. It's a black-veined longevity pill. The crowd was in an uproar. Even if they had never eaten a black-veined medicinal pill before, they were still people from large aristocratic families. They still had this bit of knowledge. A black-veined medicinal pill was a top-grade medicinal pill. Its quality was incomparably excellent, and it was truly rare in this world. It was hard to find even with 10,000 gold. Everyone turned their heads to look at the red-faced Mu Rochuan and couldn't help but sigh in their hearts. The eldest Miss's competitive nature caused her to be completely embarrassed. The clansmen who had been tricked by Mu Rochuan before couldn't help but mock her now. "Eldest young Miss lost. Just because you don't have the foresight, you think that others can't bring out anything good? Wouldn't everything be fine if I had listened to First Madam's advice?" At this moment, family head Qin had already walked over quickly. "Can I have a look?" Under everyone's watchful eyes, the old man wasn't afraid that family head Qin would rob him. He smiled as he placed the elixir into the brocade box and handed it over to family head Qin. Family head Qin held it in his hand and praised it repeatedly. As expected, it's a supreme-grade medicinal pill, a divine-grade one. Divine-level top-grade longevity pill. His eyes couldn't help but emit a strange light. In recent years, a supreme-grade longevity pill of such excellent quality was truly rare. Today, it had truly opened his eyes. Everyone from the Qin estate swarmed forward. At this moment, they all wished that they could snatch the pill from family head Qin's hands. Chapter 3372. Fifth young Master Qin glanced at the little girl in amazement. "You concocted this?" The little girl threw him a duh look. It was this tsundere attitude. When he had asked her to treat his illness, he had suffered quite a bit at her hands. This girl was clearly so rich and didn't lack money at all, so why was she so obsessed with money? She wasn't even willing to let go of her own older sister's spatial ring. Impossible, impossible. Mu Rochuan shook her head repeatedly, disbelief written all over her face. She didn't believe it. How could a girl who wasn't much older than her possibly concoct a divine rank medicinal pill? She was a divine rank alchemist. Impossible. If she was a divine rank alchemist, she would have long been famous in the 3 provinces, all right? After all, the birth of such a young divine rank alchemist would definitely cause a sensation in the world. However, she had never heard of a divine rank alchemist like her, never. Liar, she was definitely a liar. You're lying. Mu Rochuan berated angrily, it's impossible for you to concoct a divine rank medicinal pill. This is definitely a medicinal pill that you bought from a divine rank alchemist. Arbor coldly swept her a glance. Is there a difference? That's right, was there a difference? Their bet was that the crown princess's gift was the best among all the gifts. It was something that couldn't be bought with money and couldn't be bought on the black market, right? Right now, the crown princess had already won. What did Mu Rochuan mean by this? She wasn't willing to admit that she had lost the bet. But what was the point of this? With so many people watching, if she wanted to renege on the bet, she would have to be truly shameless. Mu Qingya's face had already darkened, and she berated, Rochuan, you must accept your loss. Don't let all the uncles here look down on you. Hand over the item. Mu Rochuan retreated a step. She looked at her mother in disbelief, her expression looking very disappointed and incomprehensible. Her mother was the first to stand up and berate her again. When she looked at her, her gaze was so cold, as if she was merely a stranger to her. How could it be like this? Since when did she, Mu Rochuan, end up in such a situation where she was deserted by everyone? Mu Jingfeng furrowed his brows. It was rare for him to find his conscience and say, Crown Princess, you and Rochuan are sisters. This interspatial ring isn't a big deal to you. Don't force her over such a small matter. Would Arbor give Mu Jingfeng face? Naturally, the answer was no. She did not even look at Mu Jingfeng. It was as if he was a dirty thing that could not enter her eyes at all. Such an attitude immediately stimulated Mu family head's self-esteem. In front of others, he was somewhat unable to vent his anger, but the anger in his heart burned fiercely, and the anger rushed straight to his heart. Rochuan. Mu Qingya scolded angrily, her eyes filled with disappointment for her daughter. She was the one who wanted to compete, but she did not have the magnanimity to hand over the item after losing. Such a Mu Rochuan truly made her feel extremely disappointed. This was the daughter she had painstakingly nurtured since she was young. Mu Qingya took a deep breath, closed her eyes slightly, and said with a tired expression, Rochuan, you must accept your loss. Accept your loss. A trace of anger flashed across Mu Rochuan's eyes. She suddenly took a step back and rushed toward the battle stage that had been built. Everyone turned their heads in unison, and their gazes followed her frantically running figure. Chapter 3373. Mu Rochuan landed on the stage with a whoosh. She turned her head and flung her long hair behind her back. She said sternly, isn't the competition going on? Arbor, you can only get this space ring if you defeat me. Then, she took off the ring from her finger and threw it into the air. Everyone looked over and saw that the small silver ring was wrapped in a ball of spiritual energy, floating in the air. Arbor looked up at her, then looked at Old Master Mu. What do you think, Old Master? Mu Tsang sighed and looked deeply at Mu Rochuan on the stage. Since Rochuan issued the challenge first, Jojo, you should go up and fight with her. At this moment, Grandpa Mu couldn't say anything like, you have to stop before you go too far. He saw the hatred in Mu Rochuan's eyes and knew that she wouldn't show any mercy to Qiao Qiao when she made her move later. If she hurt Jojo, the Crown Prince would definitely not let it go, given how much he doted on Jojo. Forget it. If they encountered any danger, he could only thicken his skin and stop them. He didn't want to provoke the Crown Prince's wrath because of a competition. I hope Rochuan can be more sensible, Old Master Mu thought. His gaze involuntarily landed on Mu Rochuan, who was standing on the stage with her head held high. Arbor walked up the stage slowly, unlike Mu Rochuan, who gracefully leaped into the air with a fancy movement technique. It was very pleasing to the eye. Xiao Mu slowly walked up step by step. She was plain and unremarkable, and her face was expressionless. She stared at Mu Rochuan with her pitch-black eyes that resembled ice pearls for quite a while before saying, "You have already lost the bet just now. The space ring was the prize of the previous bet. It has nothing to do with this competition." "You're scared?" Mu Rochuan asked sharply. Arbor shook his head. "If you lose this competition, you'll hand over your 5 properties in Dragonflame City to me. If I lose, I'll still say the same thing. You can do whatever you want with me. Do you want to bet?" Everyone, the Crown Princess was clearly trying to kill Mu Rochuan, wasn't she? Mu Qingya's eyes narrowed, and she hurriedly interjected, "Rochuan, she wanted her daughter to grow some brains." In the end, she had only spoken 3 words when Mu Rochuan nodded in agreement. Her eyes were filled with monstrous rage as she said word by word, "If you lose, I want you. Disappear before my eyes. Disappear forever." Arbor was expressionless. "Sure." Mu Rochuan abruptly retreated a few steps and waved her hand in front of her. Several offensive talismans jumped out and flew straight towards Arbor's face. "Die!" Mu Rochuan angrily shouted. Just as the attack talisman was about to reach Arbor, 2 binding talismans and sleeping talismans leaped out from her fingers and pounced towards Arbor. If she were to be struck by the talisman, with her cultivation, she would definitely be temporarily held back. She only needed a 2-second pause. Excitement bloomed in Mu Rochuan's eyes. It was a sense of joy that came from being determined to win. Arbor was dead meat. A purple talisman slowly floated in front of Arbor. Suddenly, it split open, and talisman power overflowed. It formed a circular protective barrier that enveloped her. After the defensive talisman was activated, the several dozen attack talismans that Mu Rochuan threw were all blocked by the defensive barrier. Mu Rochuan's expression froze. Chapter 3374. Purple Talisman. Mu Rochuan almost wanted to rub her eyes. The talisman Arbor casually took out was a purple talisman. Could it be that all the talismans she made now had reached the purple talisman level? She subconsciously shook her head hard, a trace of disbelief showing in her eyes. She really didn't believe that Arbor could make talismans and refine pills at such a young age. Who trained her? This girl grew up in the lower star domain, okay? The lower star domain was generally lacking in spirit energy. Spirit techniques, talismans, and alchemy techniques were pitifully few in number. How exactly did she grow up? Didn't anyone find it suspicious? Her experience growing up was clearly abnormal, all right? Mu Rochuan's eyes were filled with dense murderous intent. With a flick of her finger, a blue talisman flew out from her fingertips. Some of the Mu family's more perceptive people immediately shouted. Eldest Miss threw out a Thunder Spirit Talisman. The Thunder Spirit Talisman Eldest Miss made can release 6 bolts of spirit lightning. Other than Eldest Young Master, Eldest Miss Thunder Spirit Talisman is of the highest grade. What do you know? During the preliminaries this time, Eldest Young Master helped the Crown Princess draw quite a few 5 spirit talismans. A Mu family disciple who knew the truth pursed his lips in Mu Rochuan's direction. After all, they're blood-related siblings. It's normal for him to help the Crown Princess. Why do you think Eldest Miss is always targeting the Crown Princess? It's definitely because she's jealous. A group of Mu family disciples whispered below. Although their voices weren't loud, that kind of small voice floated into Mu Rochuan's ears from time to time, making her even more agitated and embarrassed. Who the hell was jealous of that damned woman? Who was jealous of her? She was the dignified eldest miss of the Mu family, why would she need to be jealous of her? It was truly hilarious, hilarious. A trace of anger flitted across Mu Rochuan's eyes. Her fingers flew, and she threw out 3 more Thunder Spirit talismans. They surrounded Arbor from all sides and floated towards him. In the Mu family competition, only talismans could be used. Things like cultivation, spiritual power, pills, and the like could not be used. Therefore, Mu Rochuan believed that even if Arbor had used a purple talisman defensive talisman, it still wouldn't be able to withstand her 4 spiritual thunder talismans and 24 spiritual thunders. Old Master Mu's fingers gripped the armrest of the chair as he looked at Xiao Mu anxiously. Rose Xian really didn't know when to stop. Originally, in the clan competition, they would stop after a certain point, but when it came to her, it had become a fight to the death. Would Jojo's defensive talisman be able to withstand 24 bolts of lightning? Just as the elderly patriarch was hesitating on whether he should intervene, he suddenly saw Xiaomu also fling out several defensive talismans with a flick of her sleeve, erecting 4 layers of defensive barriers around her. The high walls towered over her, protecting her properly. Several bolts of spiritual lightning struck the outer layer of the defensive barrier, but were unable to break through it. A trace of anger flashed across Mu Rochuan's eyes. Mu Rochuan was very familiar with those blue defensive talismans. They were the talismans her brother drew. Sure enough, her brother was biased to the heavens. Now, he only knew how to help Arbor bully her and didn't care about their past relationship at all. Mu Rochuan's face was incomparably gloomy. At this time, Arbor was standing inside the defensive wall and took out a talisman glowing with purple light from his small waist pouch. You should also try my Thunder Spirit talisman. Be careful. Miss Chiao said expressionlessly. Chapter 3375. In the blink of an eye, Arbor flicked the purple talisman in his hand out. Everyone only saw a streak of light streak across the sky before the talisman suddenly exploded in front of Mu Rochuan. It was so fast that it was almost too much for the eyes to take in. Rumbling thunder and lightning streamed down from the sky. Mu Rochuan didn't panic either. With a calm expression, she also built 4 defensive walls around herself. After the defensive talisman was activated, her entire body was wrapped in the defensive walls. Even a strand of her hair was wrapped in it. She gazed coldly at Xiao Mu across from her through the transparent defensive wall, a sneer on her lips. Could it be that a small lightning talisman was delusional enough to think it could break through her defensive walls? What a joke! The lightning talisman she made couldn't break through the defensive talisman her big brother drew because her big brother was helping Arbor. Taking 10,000 steps back, the lightning talisman Arbor threw out should have been drawn with her big brother's help. Her big brother only had 2 more lightning talismans than her, so he might not be able to break through her defensive talisman. Moreover, there was only 1 lightning talisman. Mu Rochuan's lips curled into a cold sneer. Arbor, so what if Big Brother helps you? At most, we're equal in strength. I can't do anything to you, but you can't do anything to me. Mu Rochuan's line of sight seemed to be filled with dazzling purple-red lightning. A strange scene appeared in front of her. As the first lightning bolt fell, more and more lightning bolts seemed to crazily squeeze out of the void and smashed towards her body. Mu Rochuan had already sensed that something was amiss when the spiritual lightning landed on her body. This lightning bolt was really a bit fierce. He smashed his head against his own defensive wall, creating a large hole in the transparent defensive wall in front of him. Terrifying lightning bolts desperately squeezed in through the crack. As soon as they touched her body, the electricity surged into her body, making her hands and feet feel cold. She once again experienced the painful feeling of being struck by lightning. Arbor! Mu Rochuan angrily roared, her eyes bursting with needle-like poisonous light. Yet Xiao Mu merely cast her a cold glance. She didn't budge from her spot and merely watched as that spiritual thunder talisman completely enveloped her body. At this moment, everyone present was shocked. Naturally, everyone had seen the purple lightning talisman that the little crown princess had thrown out. Even though it was a purple talisman, there was only one of it. Even though it was powerful, it probably wouldn't last for long. Moreover, eldest Miss Mu had several defensive talismans in front of her to protect her. She should be fine. Unexpectedly, after the purple talisman was activated, a lightning cloud floated above Mu Rochuan's head. Just like that, with the supreme power of lightning, it fiercely smashed down on her body. What was even more shocking was that eldest Miss Mu couldn't even withstand the little crown princess' first bolt of spiritual lightning. The defensive wall had clearly cracked. At the same time, Mu Rochuan had no other choice but to throw out a few more defensive talismans to fill the cracks in the defensive wall in front of her. However, what was shocking was that the second defensive wall that Mu Rochuan had just released actually crumbled into pieces under the crackling of the two bolts of spiritual lightning. In the blink of an eye, Mu Rochuan's pupils fiercely shrank. With a flick of her fingers, 5 defensive talismans flew out and built 5 transparent defensive walls in front of her. However, what made people despair was that the lightning talisman's power was fierce. Chapter 3376. Just as the defensive wall was about to be completed, a bolt of spirit lightning struck down and shattered it with a loud bang. 9 bolts of spiritual lightning. Mu Yuanyuan tightly grasped Mu Lixiang's small hand and cried out excitedly, 9 bolts. 9 bolts of spiritual lightning. Mu Lixiang's eyes also emitted a strange light as she stared intently at the battle between the little crown princess and Mu Rochuan, her blood boiling. Heavens! Sure enough, the little crown princess's performance was unexpected yet also reasonable. She displayed her powerful talisman skills to everyone. She knew it. She knew it. The little crown princess talisman skills were definitely superior to everyone in the Mu family. Her talisman crafting technique was obviously not on the same level as the talisman crafting techniques of all the Mu clan disciples. If the little crown princess was willing to give her a few pointers, she believed that her talisman skills would definitely advance by leaps and bounds. 9 bolts of spiritual lightning. No, it was already 10 bolts of spiritual lightning. After being bombarded by 10 bolts of spiritual lightning, the defensive wall on Mu Rochuan's body completely crumbled. Although Mu Rochuan was frightened, her expression was still very calm. The defensive talismans she drew in yesterday's preliminaries were nearly used up. She could only activate a speed talisman on her body and madly dashed on the stage to avoid the spiritual lightning that came crashing down. Mu Jingfeng's eyes had already narrowed into slits at this time. He stared at the small figure on the stage with shock and some greed, his eyes gazing longingly at the spiritual lightning hovering in the air. What kind of talisman inheritance was this? Throughout their entire Mu family, there had never been such a powerful talisman skill, right? At this very moment, everyone in the Mu family was very shocked as they watched this battle. The little crown princess seemed to be suppressing eldest young Miss Mu with an absolute advantage. Eldest young Miss's current appearance was extremely wretched. She quickly moved around the contest ring to avoid the thundercloud above her. However, no matter how fast she ran, there was only so much space. No matter where she ran, the thunderclouds would follow her like gangrene. Her ankles and elbows were almost hit several times, causing her to be at a loss of what to do. Mu Qingya stood up from her seat and looked at her daughter in shock. She clenched her brocade handkerchief tightly in her hand. At this time, the disciples of the Mu family below had already let out waves of incredulous cries. 15 bolts of spiritual lightning. How is that possible? Even a top-grade Thunder Spirit talisman can only release 12 bolts of spiritual lightning. What's going on? Oh my God, is the little crown princess trying to defy the heavens? How could a tiny lightning spirit talisman contain 15 bolts of lightning? 15. 16. Someone immediately said, trembling with fear. The group of Mu family's children all looked at the little crown princess with a look of looking at a monster. This isn't the lightning spirit talisman that we know of. Mu Yuanyuan cried out in excitement. Mu Lixiang also hurriedly nodded and shouted, what kind of lightning spirit talisman is this? Lightning continued to roll down, and there were already 20 bolts of spiritual lightning. Meanwhile, on the stage, Mu Roxuan had already exhausted all of her talismans. At this time, she was still running around the stage in a sorry state, jumping and jumping as she rapidly dodged the lightning bolts descending from the sky. Chapter 3377. Moreover, she had already broken the rules. While activating her defensive spiritual weapon, she began to use her spiritual power to escape the bombardment of the lightning bolts. She couldn't care so much now and felt that preserving her life was more important. It wasn't that she didn't try to escape from the stage earlier. It was just that the lightning bolts had built a high wall around the stage. If she wanted to pass through, she was bound to be struck twice by the lightning bolts. For the sake of her life, she didn't dare to act blindly without thinking. Mu Roxuan's expression was incomparably dark at this moment. She couldn't figure out why the lightning talisman that Arbor threw out actually had such offensive power. Why didn't it show any signs of stopping after more than 20 bolts of lightning? How many bolts of lightning could there be? This was also the question in Elder Mu, Mu Jingfeng, and the rest's hearts. At this moment, all the Mu family members were looking at the little crown princess on the stage in shock. If it was said that they were just giving it a try in the beginning, leisurely watching the competition between the two juniors, they didn't take it seriously. But now, they were practically sizing them up with rapt attention, paying attention to their every move. Especially the little crown princess, who was standing alone on the stage without moving an inch. Everyone's gaze fell on her. It seemed that this was the only way to clearly see what kind of energy this little fellow's body was filled with to actually be able to draw a lightning talisman that defied the laws of heaven. Boom! Mu Roxuan's footsteps slowed by half a beat, and a bolt of lightning immediately struck her back. The defensive barrier on her body instantly broke, and the defensive spiritual weapon in her hand also dimmed and fell to the ground with a clatter. Mu Qingya immediately shouted, Roxuan, what are you still hesitating for? Hurry and admit defeat. Admitting defeat wasn't shameful. This was originally a family competition, and losing to someone of the same age wasn't a big deal. No one could guarantee that they wouldn't lose in this lifetime. Mu Roxuan also understood this logic, but she just couldn't accept it emotionally. She would lose to Arbor in front of everyone and all her uncles. Therefore, she didn't want to admit defeat. She didn't want to admit defeat at all. What kind of talisman is this? Mu Roxuan spat out a mouthful of blood. She turned her head and glared fiercely at Arbor, as if she wanted to burn a hole in her face. She hated the girl in front of her. Because of her appearance, she broke the legend of her high and mighty young miss, causing her to fall from a genius to the bottom of the valley in an instant and become an ordinary person. Because of her sharp edge, she, the genius Miss Mu of the Mu family, was overshadowed and completely lost the halo of the past. After this battle, when people mentioned the Mu family's young lady in the future, they would only take delight in talking about how amazing the young crown princess was. Her talisman crafting technique could be said to be the best in the world since ancient times. How hateful! Mu Rochuan felt a sharp pain in her abdomen. If she were to look inwardly, she would definitely realize that the crack in the spiritual mound mirror had widened significantly. There was even a faint black gas floating out of the spiritual mound mirror. It was like a death aura that enveloped her spiritual mound mirror as it slowly rotated. If she could notice it now or ask Grandpa Mu about it, Grandpa Mu would definitely be shocked and ask her to pay more attention to it. However, she did not notice the gloomy black gas. This was the initial phenomenon of mental demons growing crazily after the crack in the spiritual mound mirror. Chapter 3378. At this moment, this dark and demonic aura quietly took root in Mu Rochuan's heart and slowly grew. As it grew, it would slowly corrode her limbs and bones, invading the depths of her meridians. Once this demonic aura corroded her entire body, Mu Rochuan would lose all of her cultivation and explode from the inside out. At this time, as her inner demon slowly grew, Mu Rochuan would only discover that her cultivation was slowly regressing. If she didn't take this seriously, the consequences would be unthinkable. What kind of talisman is this? Another bolt of lightning struck Mu Rochuan's body. She only felt the power of the lightning slipping into her damaged meridians. It was running amok in all the meridians in her body, making her feel very uncomfortable. Arbor coldly glanced at her and said indifferently, "Third-level top-grade lightning talisman." What was a third-level top-grade lightning talisman? None of the Mu family disciples present had heard of it before. However, they weren't all fools. Just by hearing the name and combining it with the current situation on the stage, a portion of them were instantly enlightened. Third level. It can't be that there are 36 bolts of lightning, right? A Mu family disciple cried out in shock. Meanwhile, Mu Yuan was already dumbfounded and subconsciously grabbed Mu Lixiang's hand. Li Lixiang. Did you hear that? Mu Lixiang nodded heavily, her eyes shining with excitement. As expected, wanting to befriend the crown princess from the start was absolutely correct. If she had the chance, she would definitely ask the little crown princess for guidance. The last 3 bolts of spiritual lightning struck Mu Rochuan's body. Mu Rochuan couldn't withstand it and was directly smashed to the ground by the lightning bolts. A trace of blood appeared in her mouth and she coughed several times. She felt her body become very heavy and she didn't even have the strength to lift a finger. Xiao Mu glanced at Mu Rochuan before turning around to walk down the martial arts stage. She merely threw out the words, "You've lost." It was unknown if this sentence provoked Mu Rochuan, but she suddenly struggled to get up from the ground. She reached out to wipe the blood from the corner of her mouth and suddenly laughed with a hoarse voice. "You think you've won?" Mu Rochuan's voice instantly became extremely cold. Arbor turned to look at her and saw that her eyes were glowing with a strange light. Her expression was focused and somewhat distorted as she looked at her. "Did you win?" she shouted harshly. Mu Qingya's heart skipped a beat. She wanted to rush up and drag her troublesome daughter off the stage. However, just as her body moved slightly, the old madam reached out and pressed the back of her hand. She shook her head at her. "The competition is still going on. It's futile for you to go up." Based on Mu Rochuan's current situation, even if her father, Mu Jingfeng, went up, with Rochuan's competitive nature, she probably wouldn't listen to her father's words and obediently stepped down from the stage, much less Mu Qingya, who was an ordinary person. The old madam sighed, feeling sorry for her granddaughter. She used to be such an obedient and sensible child. How could she have been blinded by jealousy and become so extremely terrifying? The competition isn't over yet. Mu Rochuan's eyes flashed with a strange light. She suddenly flung out several talismans shrouded in black aura from her sleeves and instantly pounced on Arbor's back. Mu Xingqian immediately stood up from his seat. "Rochuan, what are you doing?" Chapter 3379. Mu Ruxuan's mind was already muddled by her desire to win, so how could she still hear Mu Xingqian's reprimand? Moreover, even if she heard Mu Xingqian's reprimand, she probably wouldn't take it to heart. In her heart, this big brother had already switched sides and completely stood on Arbor's side. They were no longer on the same path. Arbor slightly turned his head and frowned as he stared at the several talismans emitting dense black aura that Mu Ruxuan threw over. It's a mystic Yin talisman. A Mu family elder couldn't help but jump up and shout with a grave expression, "How can eldest young miss use talismans?" What was a mystic Yin talisman? Everyone in the Mu family knew about it. It was a talisman filled with evil Yin energy drawn by a talisman master. The mystic Yin talisman was the most basic offensive talisman among the forbidden talisman arts. A powerful talisman master could draw the evil Yin energy between heaven and earth and make it enter the human body, controlling and even wantonly destroying the body. A person who was hit by a mystic Yin talisman usually didn't know that they had been cursed. The power of this talisman could perhaps lie dormant in a person's body for 3 to 5 years. Once it erupted, the person would either be manipulated into a puppet or die without a burial ground. It was no joke that everyone hated talisman masters. At least in the 3 continents, no one welcomed a dark existence like talisman masters. The Mu family's patriarch, Mu Jingfeng, stared at his daughter with an unsightly expression, inwardly cursing Mu Ruxuan's brain. You secretly grasped talisman arts. If you only used them in secret, no one would be able to catch you. But now, you used this kind of sinister talisman in front of everyone's eyes. How could it not arouse everyone's disgust? At this time, there were already several Mu family elders sitting in the elders' seats. The originally silent Mu family elders were frowning slightly as they coldly looked at Mu Ruxuan. Many Mu family disciples in the crowd also shouted, "Eldest young miss actually knows such a vicious talisman art like the mystic Yin talisman. Heavens, is she still a disciple of our divine province's Mu family? What's her relationship with a talisman master? Eldest young miss, you're actually a talisman master. How disappointing." Everyone couldn't help but stand up and look worriedly in the young crown prince consort's direction. Could the little crown princess deal with a powerful charm master? All of this happened in a matter of minutes. While everyone was cheering, the Xian Yin talismans that Mu Ruxuan threw out had already arrived in front of Arbor. Seeing these mystic Yin talismans split open in front of Qiao Mu's face, and wisps of turbid Yin energy swarmed out from within, everyone couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat for the young crown prince consort. Old Master Mu jumped up from his seat and dashed toward the ring. Rou Xian really had no sense of propriety. With such a dense wave of Yin energy, the little crown princess Everyone was flabbergasted when they discovered that the seemingly dense mass of Yin energy froze in place when it was 3 inches away from the little crown princess. It wasn't willing to take even half a step forward. That mass of Yin energy seemed to be extremely afraid of the little crown princess's body. After hesitating for a few seconds, it turned around with a whoosh and rushed directly in Mu Ruxuan's direction. Everyone stared blankly at the scene before them, unable to understand what was going on. What was with this Yin energy? Chapter 3380. Baleful Yin energy also had things that were afraid of it. Everyone simultaneously glanced at the young crown prince consort. There was nothing unusual. But Mo Lian felt that his little wifey was like a ball of light. These evil and filthy things naturally had to stay away from the source of light and didn't dare to approach. Just like those ghosts that the little fellow encountered in the underground palace. Didn't these sinister and ghostly things also not dare to approach his wifey? Mo Lian secretly muttered in his heart. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that his conjecture was very reasonable. His wifey was definitely a ball of light. Arbor expressionlessly looked at the baleful energy that had retreated back and was rushing towards Mu Rochuan. Blinking her eyes, she looked down at her little hand in confusion. Just now, she was already prepared to throw out an Earth-grade defensive talisman to break these baleful energy. But they were actually very perceptive and didn't come over. Since that was the case, she also didn't have the leisure to chase after these sinister and ghostly things. And at this very moment, Mu Rochuan was in big trouble. The baleful energy that she had released had actually turned around and wrapped around her. At this moment, Mu Rochuan's face was shrouded in a black fog. Her entire body was immersed in the black fog as she crazily swung her hands and kicked around while shouting, "Scram! All of you scram! Scram!" No one knew what she saw. People who were trapped by the baleful energy would naturally see all kinds of strange illusions. At this moment, an elderly elder of the Mu family's elder council stood up and said with a frosty expression, "Mu Rochuan lost." Before using the profound talisman, she had already used her own cultivation and spiritual power, as well as borrowed external force to activate her spirit artifact to create a defensive barrier. Even so, she still lost. That elder said with a straight face, "She even used the profound talisman, this kind of sinister and ghostly thing. This old man feels that Mu Rochuan must be severely punished. She should be locked up in the dungeon for the time being and wait for the elder council to discuss with the family head and old family head before deciding on how to deal with her." The moment he said those words, the surroundings instantly became silent. This Mu family elder's surname was Dao, and he was famous for being straightforward. After he emphasized this matter, Mu Rochuan felt even more embarrassed. Mu Qingya hurriedly stood up. Just as she opened her mouth to defend her daughter, she heard Mu Jingfeng's stiff voice. "Elder Dao's words are very reasonable. Guards, Mu Rochuan has violated the family's rules and practiced the forbidden talisman technique without permission. Lock her up in the dungeon first and deal with her later." The guests couldn't help but look at each other. Today's events really came one after another. At this moment, the Mu family actually locked up their family's genius eldest miss in jail. However, when they thought about how this young miss actually practiced the forbidden talisman technique, everyone looked at her with hostility. Curse masters were known throughout the entire continent. They were a notorious race. These people often liked to hide in dark corners and secretly plot against others. Perhaps a charm master hiding in the crowd would secretly make a move against you and use charm techniques, causing you to never have a day of peace in the next few years, or even die suddenly. No one liked this kind of race. The people of the Divine Mainland would also have a change in expression at the mention of charm masters. Eldest Miss Mu was truly courting death. Chapter 3381. Before Mu Jingfeng could personally make a move, Elder Dao had already thrown out a wisp of divine power and tightly bound Mu Rochuan's hands. Mu Rochuan's body was instantly bound. She wanted to struggle free but was helpless. She could only scream, "Let go, let go. You guys, what do you want to do? Let go. Take her away." Mu Jingfeng glared angrily, appearing very agitated and abnormally angry. This Mu Rochuan was really getting more and more outrageous. It was fine if she couldn't help him, but now she was causing trouble for him everywhere, not letting him off. She was simply about to become a useless piece. Let go of me, you guys. Let go of me. Mu Rochuan screamed. Her hands were firmly bound by divine power, which made her feel a little at a loss. She had never been treated like this since she was young. She was flustered and appeared very angry as she kept yelling. However, at this moment, no one cared about her mood. Immediately, two Mu family members jumped onto the stage and took down the struggling and roaring Mu Rochuan. Mu Qingya clenched her fists tightly. After a while, she slumped down on the stool. The Crown Princess wins this round. Xiao Mu expressionlessly leaped down from the martial arts stage and walked towards her seat. Go, find Madame Mu and settle the accounts of Miss Mu's several properties in Dragonflame City. Arbor indifferently turned his head and instructed Kai Xiu. Kai Xiu nodded in understanding and pursed her lips in response. She quickly walked to Mu Qingya's side and whispered a few words to her. Although Arbor didn't show it on his face, he was secretly carefully observing Mu Qingya's expression. He saw her nodding at Kai Xiu with a gentle and indifferent expression and whispering a few words to Kai Xiu. Her behavior was very appropriate and magnanimous, without the slightest trace of anger. Arbor couldn't help but frown. He immediately retracted his gaze and reached out to pick up the spoon with an indifferent expression. Was Madame Mu really able to keep her composure, or was she really friendly to her? Was he being too paranoid? Arbor thought. He put down the spoon and looked at Mu Qingya again. However, she saw that First Madame had turned her head and met her gaze. First Madame smiled faintly and nodded. There was not a trace of dissatisfaction in her expression. Kai Xiu walked to her side and whispered, First Madame said that after the banquet, she will send someone to deliver the land deeds that eldest Miss owes the Crown Princess. Oh. The young Crown Prince Consort nodded indifferently as she turned her gaze to the tournament stage. At this time, the second round of the Mu clan's disciple competition had already begun. Both sides' talisman techniques were a bit on par. However, after witnessing the wonderful talisman technique battle between the eldest Miss and the Crown Princess, everyone felt as if they were chewing wax and didn't know what to eat. Even eldest Miss Mu couldn't compare to the talisman skills of these two, let alone the Crown Princess. Everyone drank while enjoying the Mu family competition. For a moment, the atmosphere was harmonious. Mu Zhang raised his cup and smiled at family head Qin, who came to propose a toast. The two whispered a few words. Suddenly, a hearty laugh sounded in the air. Ha ha ha, I'm not late, am I? Today, I heard that the talisman patrician families of the Divine Prefecture are holding a grand family competition. Disciple Qi Fang is passing by and would like to ask the brothers of the Mu clan for advice on talisman techniques. Chapter 3382. Zhang Prefecture's Phoenix the Arch City, Qi Fang, disciple of a talisman patrician family, is here to pay a visit to Old Master Mu. I wonder which brother from the Mu clan is interested and dares to compete with me. As his voice fell, everyone saw several figures sitting on the back of a large flying spirit beast, flying kite, swiftly arriving at the venue. Several people descended from the sky, beaming from ear to ear. The young man called Qi Fang leaped up with a vigorous posture and landed on the battle stage with a so sound. At this moment, there were two Mu clan disciples competing on the stage. After Qi Fang intervened, a burning fire talisman appeared in each of his hands, and he instantly threw them at the two Mu clan disciples. Those two were caught off guard and happened to be caught off guard. The two burning fire talismans sprang up with a rub on their bodies, and the intensity of the fire instantly soared high into the sky. Mu Jingrui's expression darkened. His hand moved, and he rapidly shot out two water spirit talismans, instantly extinguishing the flames on those two people. Everyone focused their eyes and saw that those two brats' faces were blackened by the fire spirit talismans, and there were already many burn wounds on their bodies. The men who came with Qi Fang all turned to look at Mu Jingrui. One of them said with a smile, "Black-grade water spirit talismans. I believe this must be 7th Master Mu." Mu Jingrui coldly swept a glance at that person. "Who are you people? Are you here to cause trouble?" That young man named Qi Fang just now didn't control his strength and threw out two black-grade fire spirit talismans at once. Currently, there were two advanced stage talisman masters competing on the stage. How could they possibly withstand something like a black-grade fire spirit talisman? It was inevitable that they would be burned, but this young man's actions made people very unhappy. He suddenly appeared and interfered in the competition of other clans' disciples. If it was someone with a bit of common sense, they naturally wouldn't do such a disrespectful thing. Sigh, 7th Master Mu is too serious. The middle-aged man who spoke smiled and pointed at the young man on the stage. This is our Qi clan's young Master Fang. I am Old Zhong, a servant of the Qi clan. We are from the Talisman patrician family of Tsang Prefecture's Phoenix the Arch City. The Mu family's disciples all looked at the Qi family's people who suddenly appeared with unkind eyes. Needless to say, these people from the Qi family were definitely here to mess things up. Otherwise, why would she show up at Grandpa Mu's birthday party? Why would she come to the stage uninvited and throw out 2 dark-level fire talismans at the 2 disciples who were in the middle of the competition? Young Master Fang is the 33rd talisman master in our Qi family's younger generation. I'm 28 years old this year. Old Zhong chuckled as he explained. It would have been fine if he hadn't said anything, but once he did, everyone's expressions became a little strange. Especially the guests. They looked at the 2 Mu clan disciples on the battle stage, their faces blackened from the burns, and then looked at young Master Fang. Who won and who lost was immediately revealed. This young Master Fang was only 28 years old, yet he was able to subdue 2 talisman masters of the Mu family in one move. As for the 2 Mu clan disciples on the martial arts stage, it was obvious that they were much older than young Master Fang. Although the faces of the 2 Mu family disciples were burnt black, it could be seen from the expression on their faces that other than embarrassment, there was also a trace of shame. They had disgraced the Mu family. This young Master Fang had subdued them in one move, and they didn't even have the slightest ability to fight back. Chapter 3383. The Qi family's young master was only 28 years old, and he was only ranked 33rd among the Qi family's younger generation. With this ranking, he was able to suppress 2 Mu family disciples with one move. The 2 of them were so embarrassed that they could not lift their heads. This was truly shameful. If not for 7th Master's help just now, they might have been seriously injured by the other party's fire spirit talisman. The 2 of them drooped their heads and lowered them. Moving their feet, they ran down the stage dejectedly. And at this moment, only Qi Fang alone was standing on the enormous battling platform. This youth stood with his hands behind his back, looking like a talisman grandmaster and rather arrogant. This little brother has specially come to seek guidance from the Mu family disciples. I wonder which brother Mu is willing to come on stage and compete with this little brother. When Qi Fang's words fell, the entire venue was silent. The group of Mu clan disciples looked at each other, and all of them were at a loss of what to do. They were not fools. Anyone could see that this Qi Fang dared to challenge the Mu family alone, so he must have something extraordinary about him. The competition venue was in the Mu family. If the Mu family's eldest young master directly went up, he would definitely be able to suppress and defeat Qi Fang. However, Qi Fang had already said that he was ranked 33rd among the Qi family's younger generation. If the Mu family sent Mu Xingqian, who was ranked first, to deal with this fellow, wouldn't it be lowering Mu Xingqian's status too much? However, if they sent someone else, they might not necessarily win. Just as the elders were muttering to themselves, Mu Wuzi jumped up from his seat. I'll compete with you. His father, Mu Jingyang, subconsciously turned around and glared fiercely at his son. This impulsive fellow jumped out without seeing the situation clearly. As a father, how could he not know how good his son's talisman skills were? This Qi family disciple was a black-rank talisman grandmaster, so his son was definitely not his match. However, Mu Wuzi had already stepped up, so as a father, he had no reason to crush his son's confidence. Thus, he could only glare fiercely at Mu Wuzi and say, "Don't show off." Mu Wuzi glanced at his father and hurriedly ran up the stage. He tilted his head and glared at Qi Fang. "Surnamed Qi, this young master will fight you." Qi Fang didn't get angry. He just calmly cupped his hands at Mu Wuzi. "Nice to meet you. Little brother, please go ahead." Mu Wuzi did not hold back. Since the other party asked him to go first, there was no reason for him not to make the first move. In fact, for Mu Wuzi to be able to reach the high level of Talisman Master at the age of 13, he could already be considered a genius. However, he had taken after his father's temper since he was young. He was impulsive and easily angered. Now that he was on the stage, he threw 2 attack talismans at Qi Fang without hesitation. Qi Fang chuckled and threw out a defensive talisman to block the attack. Then, with a flick of his left hand, a fire talisman flew towards Mu Wuzi at lightning speed. Mu Jingrue's eyes darkened slightly as he exchanged glances with the Mu family's third uncle, Mu Jingyuan, who was sitting beside him. The other party really didn't come with good intentions. He had prepared quite a few fire talismans on him. It looked like he was determined to make their Mu family look bad this time. Mu Xingchen frowned. "I'll go chase him away." Mu Jingrue shook his head. "Xingchen, you can't go up." Xingchen, you stay here." Mu Jingyuan nodded in agreement. Chapter 3384. Yet, the other party sent a small fry ranked 33rd to provoke them. If Xingchen had to go up and deal with this, then it meant that their Mu family had no one else. Aside from Xingchen, they did not have any other capable disciples. Mu Xingchen also understood this logic, but how could he watch someone come to his grandfather's birthday banquet to provoke them and not say anything? "Let's wait and see," Mu Jingrue said in a low voice, but his expression was frighteningly dark. This Qi Fang was a clown. If they did not take him down, then he would continue to disgust them. However, the most difficult thing to do now was that there were so many guests present in front of everyone. If the Mu family did not take out some real skills and take down this Qi family member, then everyone would definitely suspect that their Mu family was an unwarranted family. More seriously, they might even think that the Mu family of the Divine Prefecture's Talisman Patrician family was inferior to the Qi family of Zhangzhou's Phoenix Emperor City. In just a few moments, the match between Qi Fang and Mu Wuzi had reached a point where the victor was already decided. Although Mu Wuzi was still young and had outstanding talisman techniques, he would lose without any suspense in front of a black-rank talisman master. The other party threw out an explosion talisman. As the stage shook, Mu Wuzi's figure quickly retreated. He somersaulted several times in the air, but he was still unable to avoid the flames from the explosion talisman. Once the flames touched his body, the layer of defense on his skin quickly withered away. Seeing that his son was about to be enveloped by the flames from the explosion talisman after the layer of defense burned away, Mu Jingyang could no longer bear it and jumped up. "Fifth brother." Mu Jingrue called out and hurriedly reached out to stop him. If he rushed up the stage, others would definitely mock him in their hearts, even if they did not say anything. The son could not beat the other party, so the father rushed up. If word got out, it would not be good for the Mu family's reputation. Mu Jingyang was impulsive by nature. Being stopped by Mu Jingrue, his temper rushed up and he was about to explode. Mu Jingfeng said coldly, "Sit down. Go find Yuan Yuan. Let her go up and replace Mu Wuzi," Mu Jingfeng said indifferently. Mu He, who was standing behind him, nodded. He immediately accepted the order and walked behind the screen, towards the table where the girls from the cadet branch were seated. Mu Yuanyuan immediately nodded in agreement after she conveyed the patriarch's intentions to Mu Yuanyuan. Mu Lixiang, on the other hand, was not convinced. She pursed her lips and said in a low voice, "They never look for us when there's good stuff." Whenever she encountered such a difficult situation, she would always think of the disciples of the side branches. Replacing Mu Wuzi meant that Yuan Yuan would have to face the young master of the Qi family. It would be fine if she could beat him, but if Yuan Yuan couldn't beat the Qi clan's disciple, she might even be blamed by the Mu clan. Mu Yuan Yuan accepted the order and stood up. She just so happened to see the little crown princess looking over. She nodded at her with a smile and walked towards the battle arena. The disciples of the Mu family all around were whispering to each other in low voices. Now that Mu Yuan Yuan was on the stage, everyone's eyes were focused on her. Mu family, Mu Yuan Yuan. Please give me some pointers, young Master Qi. Mu Yuan Yuan leaped onto the battle arena and reached out to support Mu Wuzi, who had retreated several steps. She raised a water spirit talisman and slapped it on Mu Wuzi's body. The flames that had been rising on Mu Wuzi's body instantly disappeared. Chapter 3385. Qi Fang's eyes narrowed slightly as he looked at the girl in front of him with a slight smile. Mu Yuan Yuan was not very good looking. At best, she could only be considered a delicate beauty. However, she was standing calmly in front of everyone, giving off a sense of security. Qi Fang glanced at the extinguished flames on Mu Wuzi's body. His eyes flashed as he smiled. The women of the Mu family are not inferior to any men. Mu Yuan Yuan's water spirit talisman must be a black-grade talisman. Otherwise, it would not be able to extinguish the flames on Mu Wuzi's body. Sister Yuan Yuan. Mu Wuzi naturally knew Mu Yuan Yuan. Moreover, he had a good relationship with her. This little brat usually submitted to the strong. Mu Yuan Yuan was a girl from the side family, but she was stronger than him. Mu Wuzi was very convinced of Mu Yuan Yuan's strength. "Alright, you can go down first and treat your wounds. Leave this to Sister Yuan Yuan." Mu Yuan Yuan smiled at him and chased him away. There were many small wounds on Mu Wuzi's body, all of which were formed during the battle. Qi Fang looked gentle and refined, but in reality, he was very heavy-handed. If Mu Wuzi had not been quick-witted, he would have been carried off the stage. Qi Fang smiled at Mu Yuan Yuan. "Miss Mu, please." Mu Yuan Yuan did not waste time talking nonsense with him. She cupped her fists and bowed. The moment she looked up, her eyes were already sharp as she attacked Qi Fang. Mu Yuan Yuan's hand gestures were very fast. With a flick of her hand, 3 talismans appeared. After the defensive talisman strengthened herself, the offensive talisman was already in front of Qi Fang. Qi Fang smiled coldly without panicking. He reached out and flicked away one of the offensive talismans. The talisman power contained in the other 2 offensive talismans was blocked in mid-air by the offensive talisman he threw out. The 2 offensive talismans collided and produced an earth-shattering sound. A vortex of power appeared in the air and spread out with a loud bang. Fortunately, the defensive talisman array around the martial arts stage had been reinforced. This wave of attack naturally did not affect the spectators sitting in the front row. The guests' spirits were lifted, and the way they looked at Mu Yuan Yuan also changed a little. Looking at the position the woman was sitting in, it was clear that she was not a direct descendant of the Mu family. It seemed that they had underestimated the Mu family. It was not that the Mu family did not have any talents. The powerful talisman technique displayed by a branch family disciple was already amazing. At this moment, Mu Yuan Yuan was completely focused on Qi Fang. When she saw him move his finger, an immobilization talisman floated over. She hurriedly turned around to dodge, but the body-securing talisman seemed to have a tracking function as it chased after her slender figure. No matter how many times Mu Yuan Yuan tried to dodge, she couldn't avoid it. Mu Yuan Yuan frowned. She took out 2 defensive talismans from her inner world and quickly opened them, erecting 2 defensive walls around her. The body-securing talisman suddenly pounced over and exploded in front of her eyes. Mu Yuanyuan felt a strong binding of talisman power. She was actually frozen in place. Of course, being immobilized only lasted for an instant. Mu Yuanyuan immediately used the adversity-dispelling talisman to break free from the immobilization talisman. In the eyes of an outsider, this was only a matter of 1 or 2 seconds. Of course, some juniors with poor eyesight didn't even notice that Mu Yuanyuan had been immobilized for 1 or 2 seconds. But it was precisely this 1 or 2 seconds of immobilization. Qi Fang took the opportunity to throw out an explosion talisman, which exploded on Mu Yuanyuan's body. Chapter 3386. Following a loud bang, the ground shook violently. Mu Yuanyuan's body was sent flying backwards by the explosion talisman. She landed on the edge of the stage with a thud, half of her body hanging upside down. She spat out a large amount of blood, evidently severely injured. Good. At this very moment, someone suddenly cheered and clapped his hands together, producing a resounding slap. All the guests looked at each other in dismay before turning their gazes to that Qi family's old servant. This guy actually slapped them in the face, and even shouted the word "good" so loudly. Sure enough, when the word "good" fell, the faces of all the Mu family disciples, including old Master Mu, changed at the same time. All the Mu family disciples glared at that old fellow. There were even hot-blooded youths who jumped up from their seats and cursed, "What's so good about you, old fellow?" Old servant didn't get angry. He squinted his eyes and said with a chuckle, "It was a slip of the tongue. I only praised my family's young master because his explosion talismans were thrown with great skill. I didn't expect to empathize with everyone's feelings." Ha, ha ha ha. Old servant laughed as he spoke. His sarcastic remarks angered everyone in the Mu family so much that their chests hurt. Qi Fang confidently stood on the stage with his hands behind his back, assuming the demeanor of a talisman grandmaster. "Everyone, I hope everyone won't patronize me. Sending a woman up to compete with me, isn't this a bit of an insult to my Qi Fang?" At this moment, Mu Lixiang had already led people to the side of the stage and reached out to help Mu Yuanyuan, who was half hanging on the stage, down. A hint of bitterness appeared on Mu Yuanyuan's lips as she smiled at her. She only managed to say, "I'm fine," before she spat out another mouthful of blood. It was obvious that the explosion talisman that had exploded on her body had injured her internal organs. "Yuanyuan!" Mu Lixiang almost cried out. Yuanyuan's current appearance was too frightening. Her small face was deathly pale, as if she would stop breathing in the next moment. The blood from her mouth and nose couldn't be stopped. Mu Jingrui also hurried over at this moment and took out a healing pill for Mu Yuanyuan to consume. He turned to glare at Qi Fang with fury and said, "You were too heavy-handed. How can you beat someone up like this in a sparring session?" Sorry. Qi Fang hurriedly explained with a smile, "I was the one who acted inappropriately. I have a healing pill here. I hope that after Miss takes it, your body will feel slightly better." When Mu Lixiang saw this lowly man's chuckle as he handed over a black pill, she was immediately enraged. She reached out and slapped Qi Fang's hand. "Who wants your medicinal pills?" Scram! Old Zhong's face darkened as he mocked, "What's wrong? Is the Mu family a sore loser? After losing, you flew into a rage out of humiliation and threw a tantrum at our young master, didn't you?" Without waiting for Mu Lixiang to shout, Old Zhong interrupted her and continued, "In a martial arts competition, there is always a question of how much strength to use. Our young master didn't know that your family's young Mrs. body was so weak. How could he have expected that a mere explosion talisman would be able to beat her to such a state? If you guys had said earlier that this young Mrs. Body was delicate and weak, we wouldn't have fought with her. The reprimand caused the Mu family disciples' faces to turn green, white, and red. Mu Jingrui also felt a lump of resentment in his chest that couldn't go up or down. It was extremely uncomfortable to hold it in. Chapter 3387. Mu Xingchen stood up and coldly said, "Since young Master Qi is so formidable, Mu Xingchen, am willing to experience young Master Qi's brilliant moves." Qi Fang's eyes flickered. Who in the 3 provinces didn't know of Mu Xingchen's great name? He was the Mu family's most outstanding genius, eldest young master. Compared to Mu Rochuan, he was in no way inferior. Rumor had it that this eldest young master Mu was already a black stage talisman master. Moreover, his cultivation had already broken through to the divine realm, so he was also a very formidable cultivator. Qi Fang naturally had no confidence in defeating such a person. Old Zhong chuckled. You flatter me, you flatter me. Our young Master Qi is only ranked 33rd in the Qi family. Since young Master Mu wants to give him pointers, then we can only accept. Mu Jingfeng and the rest's expressions turned very ugly when they heard this. This fellow had repeatedly emphasized that Qi Fang was only ranked 33rd. Even if Mu Xingchen wanted to make a move on him, with eldest young Master Mu's status, even if he won, it would be considered an unfair victory. If eldest young Master Mu lost, then that would be called losing face all the way to the sea of forgetfulness. Put her down. A cold voice came from behind Mu Lixiang. Mu Lixiang turned to see the young crown princess standing expressionlessly behind them. She didn't know when she had walked over. She was currently frowning as she looked at Mu Yuanyuan, whose nose and mouth were still bleeding, and pointed at the empty space at the side. Mu Lixiang didn't understand, but when she saw Mu Jingrui quickly nod at her, she obeyed and helped Mu Yuanyuan to the side. Arbor stepped forward and squatted down. She took out her needle bag and inserted 2 needles into Mu Yuanyuan's body. Then, she took out a bottle of medicinal liquid and fed her a mouthful. She placed the medicinal liquid in Mu Lixiang's hand. Feed her another mouthful tonight. Tomorrow and the day after, once in the morning and once in the evening. 3 days later, her internal injuries will be healed. Mu Lixiang looked at her in shock. She lowered her head to glance at Mu Yuanyuan and saw that her complexion had indeed become much rosier. She was immediately overjoyed and repeatedly thanked her. Thank you, Crown Princess, for your treatment. The little Crown Princess was indeed skilled in medicine. Yuanyuan's complexion was much better after 2 simple injections and a sip of the medicine. Old Zhong looked at the medicine bottle in Mu Lixiang's hand. His eyes flashed and he suddenly said, "Miss, can the medicine bottle in your hand?" Mu Lixiang looked at him warily, then put the bottle into her inner world. Then, he ignored Old Zhong and directly called for someone to lift Mu Yuanyuan up. The group of people then carried Mu Yuanyuan out of the banquet. Old Zhong's expression darkened. His hawk-like eyes stared coldly in the direction Mu Lixiang and the others had left, and he let out a cold snort. Following which, his gaze landed on the young crown prince consort in a good mood. This is. Arbor was too lazy to bother with him. His body flashed, and he was already standing on the contest ring. His eyes flashed like cold lightning. "I will compete with you on behalf of my big brother." Qi Fang looked at the little girl in front of him, who was like a jade sculpture, and sparks flashed through his eyes. "Little girl, your body is delicate and weak. Don't cry when you lose." Qi Fang had just finished his teasing when a jade talisman leaped out with a whoosh and flew straight toward him. The powerful binding talisman power seemed to form a spiderweb that suddenly enveloped his entire body, causing Qi Fang's expression to instantly change. Chapter 3388. What? Chi Fong reacted abruptly and wanted to retreat. However, the 8 trigrams binding talisman that Arbor tossed out had already taken effect. Wherever the crowd looked, circles of 8 trigrams appeared in front of Chi Fong. Like rolling waves, one after another, they ruthlessly smashed onto the unlucky young master of the Chi family. Chi Fong roared angrily, and a strong defensive light burst out from his body. 4 defensive talismans cracked simultaneously, forming 4 defensive walls around him. However, it was of no use. The 8 trigrams binding talisman that was tossed out was still like waves, constantly smashing onto Chi Fong's body. At first, Chi Fong could still barely use his cultivation to resist the first few waves. After being smashed by the 8 trigrams binding talisman a dozen times, he suddenly felt that his limbs and bones, from his hands to his feet, were all bound. He was actually bound on the spot by the 8 trigrams binding talisman. Although everyone's eyes could not see it, he felt as if he was trapped in a huge spider web, unable to move an inch. At this moment, Chi Fong stood dumbfounded on the battle stage, unable to move even half a step. Although the others also saw the 8 trigrams binding talisman landing on Chi Fong's body like waves, the 8 trigrams binding talisman only appeared for a moment before disappearing. When they looked at Chi Fong now, they only saw that he was left on the battle stage like a block of wood. Clearly, his sorry state was somewhat laughable. Arbor's gaze landed coldly on this person. He raised his hand, and a jade talisman jumped in front of him and slowly flew up, hanging high above Chi Fong's head. So what if she's a woman? Are women inferior to you? Arbor swept a cold glance at Chi Fong. Chi Fong was completely bound by the 8 trigrams binding talisman at this moment. Other than his eyeballs that could move slightly, he could not move at all. He was also very anxious at this moment, thinking of every possible way to break free from the bindings. However, after a few seconds, he still could not move an inch. Even his fingers could not move half an inch. Explode! Arbor glanced at him indifferently and said coldly. With a loud boom, everyone at the meeting felt the chairs under them shake a few times, and their faces couldn't help but change. The might of this explosion talisman was clearly much more powerful than the one Chi Fong had used on Mu Yuanyuan. This was a jade talisman, and it was glowing with a purple light. It was obviously a purple talisman. Everyone saw that the talisman that Chi Fong had used to hit Mu Yuanyuan was a blue talisman drawn on talisman paper. It was very different from the jade talisman used by the little crown princess in front of him. The talisman power contained in it was naturally on a different level. At this moment, the people in the banquet hall were all craning their necks to look at Chi Fong, who was on the stage. Chi Fong was originally bound by the 8 trigrams body binding talisman and was unable to move at all. At this moment, after being blasted by the explosion talisman, his entire body was like a kite with a broken string, rolling towards the back of the stage. Everyone couldn't help but cover their eyes. Then, they heard a loud tremor. Young Master Fong. Old Zhong's face instantly turned extremely ugly, and he quickly rushed towards the battle stage. Young Master Fong. Young Master Fong. Several members of the Qi family also rushed over with old Zhong and hurriedly helped Qi Fong, who was lying on the ground and foaming at the mouth, up. Wah! Qi Fong bent his body and curled up into a prawn. Chapter 3389. Before he could say anything, he spat out a mouthful of blood on the ground. Following that, he coughed out blood and leaned on old Zhong's body in a dispirited manner. He gasped for breath and made a noise in his throat, but he couldn't say anything. Qi Fong's eyes were currently glaring at the young crown princess in front of him with resentment and fear. His eyes couldn't conceal his fury. However, old Zhong couldn't bear it anymore and roared, "What is your Mu clan doing? We agreed to compare notes, so how can you injure our young Master Fong to this extent?" The young crown princess looked at them expressionlessly and frowned at the questioning old Zhong. After a long pause, she said, "You didn't use immobilization talismans and explosion talismans earlier. You can use them." "I can't use them. Only you can win, but I can't win." She threw 3 consecutive questions at old Zhong, which put him in an awkward position. He stood dumbstruck on the stage, supporting Qi Fang without replying for a long time. Arbor glared at old Zhong in displeasure. "Do you still want to continue the competition?" She discovered that these people's talisman skills were truly a bit weak. In Arbor's eyes, this talisman practitioner who was said to be ranked 33rd in the Qi family couldn't even compare to her talisman skills when she was 10 years old. What talisman master? This was simply a joke. The little lady's tone is quite big. A bald, middle-aged man with an oval face walked out from the Qi family's team. His eyes were mocking as they landed on Arbor. "This one is Qi Lu. I'm willing to learn." Before this bald man called Qi Lu could finish speaking, he saw the little stoic dashing forward at lightning speed. Her speed was so fast that it was almost impossible for people to catch her movement trajectory for a moment. Teleportation talisman. Mu Jingfeng and the others' eyes couldn't help but light up when they saw the little lady teleport behind Qi Lu in an instant. So this was a teleportation talisman. Everyone was filled with awe. It was an eye-opener. This was the first time the Mu clan had seen a teleportation talisman. They had only seen this type of talisman in books before, and it was a lost talisman technique to the Mu clan. But now, while everyone was still in shock, Arbor had already arrived in front of Qi Lu. His 5 fingers spread open and tightly clasped his neck. Qi Lu was stunned for a moment before he coughed. His eyes were filled with shock as he looked at Arbor in disbelief. "You!" Arbor tightened his grip, and Qi Lu felt a cracking sound coming from his throat, as if his throat was about to be crushed. His eyes were filled with fear. Swoosh! All of a sudden, a sound pierced through the air. An arrowhead forged from fine iron tore through the air like a bolt of lightning, flying over everyone's heads and heading straight for Xiao Mu. In the blink of an eye, Mo Lian flashed in front of Xiao Mu to shield her. A fire spiritual energy circled around his palm, firmly stabilizing the arrowhead that was shooting toward them in mid-air as it let out a clanging hum. Everyone didn't know how Prince Mo flew to the little crown princess' side so quickly. Everyone only felt their eyes blur for a moment, and His Highness the Crown Prince, who was originally sitting in the banquet area, had already appeared beside the crown princess and blocked the male arrow with an iron head. Arbor frowned as he looked at the arrow that suddenly appeared. He tugged at Mo Lian's sleeve and pointed at the arrow. "There seems to be a letter left behind." Mo Lian narrowed her eyes. She broke the arrow and picked up the letter that fluttered down. Chapter 3390. When the letter was unfolded, a small bead hair clip fell out. Xiao Mu's expression changed in the blink of an eye. After skimming through the contents of the letter, the pressure on her entire person dropped by quite a bit. Layers of frost emerged from the depths of her cold and severe eyes, and it seemed like there were shards of ice continuously emerging from her entire body. For a moment, everyone on the scene felt as if winter had arrived. The surrounding atmosphere abruptly chilled, and a terrifying aura of death seemed to be closing in. Hui Feng assembled the purple forest guards. Prince Mo left with the little crown princess in large strides, leaving only this one sentence. Although the two of them didn't say anything, everyone knew that something big must have happened just by looking at their expressions. The old man was a bit stifled. He exchanged glances with his eldest son, then stood up with an exhausted expression. "Many things happened today, and I've tired everyone out. Now that something has happened to the crown princess, this old man's birthday banquet will end here." Long Shoshin smiled eccentrically. "Since old man Mu has matters to attend to, it won't be convenient for us to stay any longer. Farewell. Farewell. The other patrician family's heads were not as sarcastic as Long Shoshin, so when they heard the old man's words, they cupped their fists in salute and left one by one. Mu Jingfeng's expression darkened as he instructed Mu Liang, who was beside him, go investigate and see what happened to the crown princess. After Arbor and Mo Lien left the venue hand in hand, her almond-shaped eyes instantly turned several degrees colder. She reached out and swiped at the air, and countless black butterflies flew out from between her fingers, densely staying on the thin letter. Arbor's entire body emitted layers of cold and sharp aura. Go, find out where this person is for me. A sharp, cold glint flashed through the little crown princess's eyes. I want him to be exterminated. Don't worry, Jojo. Nothing will happen. Mo Lien reached out and grasped Jojo's small hand, a cold glint flashing through her eyes. Pass down the order to seal off all the entrances and exits. No one is allowed to leave the city for the time being. If anyone tries to use flying spirit beasts to break through the city gates, kill them without mercy. At the North City Gate of Dragonflame City. As usual, this was the peak period for the flow of people in and out of the city. Everyone was lining up to leave the city in an orderly manner. A simple and honest man carrying a carrying pole was in the middle of the line. From time to time, he would use his sleeve to wipe the sweat on his forehead, looking like he was in a hurry to leave the city. Young man, don't worry. There are a lot of people leaving the city at this time. They have to line up. An old woman behind him, supported by her granddaughter, smiled at him in a friendly manner. The simple and honest man grinned, revealing a very silly smile. Right at this moment, the cry of an eagle came from the sky. The commoners looked up and saw a goshawk flying high in the sky. It flapped its wings and swooped down. Everyone let out a small cry in unison, subconsciously shrinking their heads and retreating a few steps. The goshawk landed accurately on the ground and did not hurt anyone. A young man in black jumped down from the goshawk's back. With a cold expression, he reached into his pocket and took out a token, saying loudly, "Pass down the crown prince's verbal order. Temporarily seal the city gates. No one is allowed to enter or leave the city gates. Pass down the crown prince's verbal order." The soldier guarding the city gate was shocked. He hurriedly shouted and ran up the city gate tower, waving his arms. Chapter 3391. What? A small commotion immediately broke out among the queuing commoners. That simple and honest man shouted with a face full of annoyance, How can you close the city gates? We are in a hurry to leave the city and go home." That's right. Hearing his shout, everyone followed suit and shouted one after another. "I'm in a hurry to leave the city to exchange things with people. How can you close the city gates? What's the matter?" Everyone whispered to each other and shouted with dissatisfaction. The black-clothed youth coldly swept a glance over them. "It won't take long, at most an hour. Even if you can't wait, you still have to wait." Everyone looked at each other in dismay. You look at me, I look at you. Their mouths muttered a few words, but in the end, they still didn't dare to confront His Highness the Crown Prince. The simple and honest man seemed to be in a hurry to leave the city, carrying his shoulder pole and squeezing his way to the front of the crowd. His shoulder pole swayed back and forth, bumping into many people. The crowd started to become a little chaotic. Many people cursed and shouted, and there were even some who couldn't help but start fighting because of some small friction. That simple and honest man squeezed his way to the front of the crowd, shouting loudly at the people around him, "How can you not let people leave the city? We are all in a hurry. Everyone, let's charge out together, we'll talk after we rush out." Several hot-blooded youths were spurred on by his words, and immediately rushed towards the city gates. With this surge, even those who originally didn't want to cause trouble in the crowd were all pushed towards the gates. The black-clothed youth frowned, and with a raise of his hand, 17 to 18 nimble youths came from all directions, and very accurately picked up the few troublemakers in the crowd, and directly threw them to the ground. Several hot-blooded youths instantly wailed and fell to the ground, only to feel a chill on the top of their heads. When they looked up again, the blade was already pressed against their necks. This movement was really fast. Several people trembled one after another. Who dares to cause trouble at the northern city gates? At this time, several hundred city guards rushed down from the city gate tower. The city guard's small general led a group of people over, and the sharp spears formed a circle around the crowd. Suddenly, all the noises disappeared. Those hot-blooded youths who were still causing a ruckus shrunk their necks one by one, not daring to make a sound. The guard quickly ran to the side of the black-clothed youth, cupped his hands, and said, "Sir, the city gate has been closed." The black-clothed youth nodded. His cold eyes turned around and he said indifferently, "Don't make things difficult for them. However, if there are any troublemakers, isolate them first. It won't take long." "Yes." The young guard nodded in agreement. At this moment, the simple and honest man carrying the carrying pole had already shrunk into the crowd. His appearance was simple and honest, and his appearance was ordinary. If he hid in the crowd, he would not attract anyone's attention at all. At this moment, his head was lowered, and one of his hands was pressed against the corner of his green cloth jacket, caressing it from time to time. Everyone was driven to the sides of the road and looked at each other in dismay. It didn't even take an hour, and only about a quarter of an hour had passed. Everyone first heard the cry of a phoenix. When they looked up, they saw a fiery phoenix that seemed to be burning with blood in the depths of their eyes. The clouds on the horizon were all dyed in the crimson color of bloody flames. Chapter 3392. Everyone's line of sight seemed to be dyed red in an instant. They only felt a magnificent sight meandering over from the horizon, accompanied by a cool, fragrant breeze. It was so beautiful that it made one's heart tremble with fear. When they arrived above the northern city gate, Mo Lien reached out to grab Arbor's body. The two of them didn't wait for the fire phoenix to descend and jumped down first. They landed lightly on the ground and swept their chilly gazes over everyone in front of them. At this moment, there were thousands of people gathered at the northern city gate. However, at this moment, regardless of whether they were commoners or guards, everyone kept their mouths shut and didn't dare to make a sound. The city gate sunk into a deathly stillness. Mo Lien loosened her fingers slightly and whispered, "Here." Arbor nodded. With a flick of his finger, countless black butterflies rustled and flew toward the front of the crowd. Everyone looked up one after another. The timid ones hastily dodged those butterflies, while the braver ones crouched on the ground and craned their necks to watch. A 5- or 6-year-old child widened her round eyes and suddenly reached out to grab a butterfly that flew past her eyes. Unexpectedly, her mother's expression changed, and she hastily slapped the child's soft hand. She pulled her over and whispered, "Don't touch." The child's fingers hurt, and she opened her mouth to cry. That young mother was so frightened that her face turned pale. She hastily covered the child's small mouth with her hand and repeatedly shouted into her ear, "Don't make a sound." Arbor's gaze landed on the mother and daughter. He creased his brows and pattered toward that young mother. That young woman's pupils contracted in fright. Just as she was about to kneel down in terror, she suddenly felt her arm tighten, and someone pulled her hand away. "Wah!" The little boy's cries immediately resounded, causing everyone's hearts to tighten and they couldn't sit still. "Why are you covering her for?" Arbor glanced at that young mother in displeasure. He looked down and saw that the child's mouth and nose were already a bit red from being covered. So sorry. That young woman only realized that she was a bit funny after saying that. What did she do wrong to this little stoic in front of her? She was almost scared to death by them. She was afraid that her child would make a fuss and provoke the disgust of these mighty figures in front of her and be killed as if they were trash. After all, ordinary people like them were not cultivators. Their lives were very fragile. Arbor reached out and stroked the child's head. He tilted his head and thought for a moment. Then, he took out a box of pastries from his inner world and handed it to the crying child. Go ahead. Mo Lien, who had followed her over, nearly laughed out loud. He knew this little fellow too well. She actually wanted to use food to shut the child's mouth. After all, this was how the little fellow had dealt with the noisy little monk earlier. This trick had always worked on children. Sure enough, the gagged little ghost finally stopped crying. Arbor motioned for the young woman to bring the child to the side, and his gaze followed the crowd. In this short period of time, the crowd at the north gate began to disperse to the left and right. There was no other reason. That flock of small black butterflies was circling around a man in clusters. When the others saw this, although they didn't understand what was going on, they still very perceptively retreated. There was a 3-meter square empty space in the middle, and only that simple and honest-looking man with a shoulder pole was vigorously swinging the flock of butterflies in front of him. Chapter 3393. Go. Go away. With an abnormal expression, the man forcefully waved the butterflies in front of him and bellowed, "Hurry, and go away. Go away." Arbor coldly gazed at him, her gaze so focused that it was as if she was examining a fresh corpse. She didn't seem to move much, but she had already arrived in front of the man carrying the carrying pole. At this moment, the honest-looking man carrying the carrying pole no longer pretended to be carrying it. At some point in time, he had tossed the carrying pole to the ground. At this moment, he was completely focused and nervously stirring the butterflies with his hands. Suddenly, his gaze met Arbor's, and he couldn't help but shudder from the coldness in this little girl's eyes. The depths of this girl's eyes didn't seem to contain the slightest hint of life. It was so gloomy and cold that it evoked a trace of fear from the bottom of one's heart. Arbor's fingers moved, and a tender green vine snaked upward and wrapped around the honest-looking man's neck with a swish. An extremely cold voice quietly rose next to the man's ear. "Speak, where did you settle the person?" The man quivered and trembled several times, but he bit his lip and refused to speak. Arbor ruthlessly lashed the man's face with her vine whip. Paw! A heavy sound rang out, and the northern city gate immediately fell into a deathly silence. No one dared to even breathe loudly. Dictum talisman. Arbor's eyes emitted a cold glint as she icily said, "You will pay a great price for everything you've done." She had no intention of wasting words with this person and directly activated the dictum talisman, wanting him to tell the truth. But a silver light suddenly flashed in front of the man. As soon as the jade talisman was activated, talisman energy abruptly seeped into the man's mind and immediately took control of him. "Who are you?" "I am a disciple of the Panga clan." "The Panga clan." Arbor's eyes narrowed dangerously. She slightly waved the vine whip in her hand twice and then turned to instruct Huifeng, "Have these people leave the city and enter the city." "Disperse." "Yes." Huifeng waved his hand, and the young city guard immediately understood. He hastily bowed and hastily arranged for people to open the city gates. The city gates opened very quickly. Everyone was like birds startled by the twang of a bow. Now that they were allowed to leave, who wouldn't hurry and run? They immediately exited the city and left like a swarm of bees. The young mother mixed in with the crowd and hurriedly carried her child out of the city. The little boy was still holding the box of pastries in his hands. He leaned on his mother's shoulder and waved at Arbor happily to say goodbye. However, Arbor's attention was completely focused on the man, so he didn't see this scene. On the other hand, the Crown Prince, the young guard, and the others were amused when they saw this. This was probably a farewell thank you from a foodie. Soon, only the city guards were left at the north gate. The rest of the commoners had already run away. Only a few of the braver ones stayed behind, hiding in the corner to watch the show. There were some smart ones among these people who had long realized that this young crown princess didn't have any intention of harming anyone, so they stayed behind to watch the show. The crown princess and His Highness the Crown Prince definitely wouldn't pay them any attention. The young crown princess's purpose on this trip was to deal with this simple and honest man in front of her. At this time, the man who had been hit by the dictum talisman had already poured out everything he knew like beans from a bamboo tube. Arbor pinched the small hair clip and gazed coldly at the man. Chapter 3394. Arbor took out the thin letter and shook it in front of the man. Tell me, why did they ask me to go to Rouge Pavilion? There was a small line of words on the letter. If you want your sister's life to be safe, gather at Rouge Pavilion today. My clansmen want to make a deal with you. Your life in exchange for hers. The simple and honest man answered the question mechanically, his eyes showing a bit of sluggishness. Prince Mo's eyes were instantly filled with anger, but he suppressed it and did not explode. He only stared coldly at the ignorant honest man. A life in exchange for a life. Who came up with this idea? The man shook his head. I don't know. I'm only here to send the message. But he never expected that he would be so unlucky after using the teleportation talisman array to leave the banquet. He had been teleported 3 times in a row, but he had not been teleported out of Dragonflame City. He had been going in circles in the city. Even he couldn't believe that his face was so dark today. His teleportation talisman array could only teleport him 3 times in a row. After 3 times, he had snuck near the North City Gate, planning to take the opportunity to sneak out of the city. He did not expect the little crown princess and the crown prince to arrive so quickly. He was completely caught off guard. Arbor said coldly, hand over your teleportation talisman. Arbor glanced at the honest man and reached out to pat him. The man's expression showed that he was struggling. Then, he took out the 24 yellow teleportation talismans. Xiao Mu snatched it over, and the blue spiritual cleansing fire that shot out of her palm burned that talisman matrix to ashes in a matter of minutes. The vine wrapped around her fingers retracted back to her wrist. Arbor stared coldly at the honest man in front of him and said sternly, are you curious why the teleportation talisman array has been making you go in circles in Dragonflame City? She flicked her finger and immediately undid the dictum talisman on the man. He had been bound by the dictum talisman for a long time. Even after being unbound, the man's mind was still muddled and not very bright. But when he met Arbor's ice soul pearl eyes, he couldn't help but shudder, and his mind suddenly became much clearer. From the day I entered Dragonflame City, I set up confinement talisman arrays in several places inside and outside the city. You can't escape, Arbor said coldly. This guy's teleportation rune array was too low level to break through the confinement rune array below Arbor. Therefore, Arbor knew very well that as long as he closed the city gates, he would be able to catch a turtle in a jar. This person would not be able to escape. That simple and honest man finally came back to his senses and hurriedly knelt down to beg for mercy. Crown Princess, please spare my life. Crown Princess, this lowly one is only following orders. Crown Princess, please spare my life. Crown Princess, please, paw. A green vine struck the man's face like a bolt of lightning, causing him to cry out in pain. His entire body fell backwards, rolling on the ground as he cried out in pain. Arbor's cold and sharp gaze locked onto the man. His stoic face was filled with coldness. If even half a strand of hair on my sister's head is missing, I will kill every member of the Panga clan, never to be reincarnated. The simple and honest man crawled on the ground, his pupils constricting. He felt the cold air all over his body rushing out, and a terrifying chill came from his heart. He knew very well that the little crown princess did not seem to be joking. This time, the Panga clan was probably in for a great disaster. Chapter 3395. Divine Land Border City, 90,000 li. Inside the Panga clan's camp in the Aurora Sandland, there was nothing but yellow sand as far as the eye could see. The howling wind seemed to be singing a mournful and tragic song. The sand swirled and scattered in all directions by the messy wind, and dust swirled in the air. Jing Minyao held a horsewhip and forcefully lifted the curtain, looking darkly at the little girl tied to the pillar in the middle of the tent. The little girl was about 12 years old. She was wearing a fine satin dress, but at this moment, it was so dirty that its original color couldn't be seen. Her black eyes were fiercely glaring at Jing Minyao in front of her, and she coldly said, "Kill me if you have the guts. I still respect you as a person, but I really look down on you for being so hesitant and indecisive, bitch." Jing Minyao suddenly swung the whip in her hand at the little girl's face. "If I lose a single strand of hair, my sister will definitely take the lives of your entire family. Your entire clan will fall into eternal damnation, never to be reincarnated." The little girl hysterically roared. "Jing Minyao!" An iron lock drilled in from outside the curtain and instantly entangled the horsewhip that Jing Minyao swung over. With a little force, the horsewhip in Jing Minyao's hand was rolled and pulled, flying out of her hand and hanging on the screen next to her with a whoosh. Jing Linyao rushed in with large strides, and without any explanation, a heavy slap landed on Jing Minyao's face. "You beast, what did you do?" 2 days ago, she found out that her third sister had caught a little girl from somewhere and locked her up in a tent. At first, she didn't think much of it. After all, with her third sister's brutal temperament, whenever she saw a little girl who was more beautiful than her on the road, she would capture her and bring her back to cripple and kill her. This kind of thing had happened too many times in the past. She, Jing Linyao, was not a saint and couldn't meddle in everything. Therefore, she didn't even inquire about it before. Today, she accidentally learned from the conversation between two servants that the little girl who was actually captured from the Seekong planet in the lower star region. At that time, her heart slightly thumped, and she hurriedly sent someone to investigate. When she found out the little girl's identity, she felt as if she had been struck by lightning. She could hardly believe her ears. Jing Minyao, this idiot, actually captured Arbor's sister. Although this sister was not related to her by blood and was only a child of her adoptive parents, she had long known that Arbor did not have a good relationship with the Mu family. On the contrary, she was very close to her adoptive parents. This idiot did kidnap someone's sister. He was going to roast the entire Panga clan on the grill, wasn't he? "Let him go!" Jing Linyao shouted angrily. Jing Minyao's eyes flashed with a trace of hatred. She slapped her sister with the back of her hand. "Get lost! Do I need you to tell me what to do? Are you trying to bury the entire Panga clan because of your stupidity?" Ha! Although Arbor was the crown princess of Shenzhou, this child had nothing to do with the imperial family of Shenzhou. Do you think that the emperor of the divine land will attack the Panga clan for the village girls in the lower space zone? Ha! Ha! Don't joke around. How can a mere Arbor annihilate 200,000 people of the Panga clan? What nonsense are you talking about? Jing Linyao raised her hand and wanted to slap her again. But this time, Jing Minyao was prepared. Chapter 3396. She grabbed Jing Linyao's hand, her eyes flashing with ruthless anger. Jing Linyao, with your current cultivation level, do you still think you can order me around? Jing Minyao forcefully shook off her hand. Because she used too much strength, Jing Linyao actually staggered and her eyes narrowed dangerously. This third sister of hers was quite capable now. Ever since she used a special method to enter the level 3 Divine Master realm, her courage had increased by quite a bit. Jing Minyao shook off Jing Linyao's hand and fiercely glared at her. I don't need you to meddle in my affairs. Father is away from home. I'm your eldest sister, so I can meddle in your improper behavior, Jing Linyao coldly said. Who would have thought that as soon as she finished speaking, Jing Minyao would reach out and clap her hands twice. A large number of guards immediately swarmed into the tent and surrounded Jing Linyao. Invite our Pangu clan's Princess Jing to leave. Jing Minyao's eyes were filled with mockery as she said, for the next 2 days, ask her to stay in her tent and not come out again. Jing Linyao turned to look at the guards and revealed a bitter and sarcastic smile. I didn't expect that father would hand over the guards of the outstanding talents camp to you. How much did her father favor this youngest daughter of his? Eldest sister, I advise you not to resist, Jing Minyao coldly said. Otherwise, who knows what will happen. Yo, what's going on here? Jing Chia walked into the tent in a brocade robe and was slightly startled when she saw the scene in front of her. Jing Chiao's face could only be described as delicate and pretty, far from her eldest sister's graceful and dignified appearance, much less her youngest sister's quick-witted beauty. She simply combed her long hair and braided it down to her chest. When she walked into the tent, she showed a hint of confusion in her eyes. She smiled and tried to smooth things over. Little sister, big sister, what's wrong with you? Jing Minyao, I advise you to think carefully. Jing Linyao coldly laughed. Arbor isn't an easy person to deal with. You captured her sister, so she definitely won't let you off. Jing Minyao's lips curled and she coldly snorted. Don't scare me. Who captured her sister? It's just a coincidence. Jing Minyao was halfway through her words when she suddenly snorted and waved her hand. What are you still standing there for? Please ask Princess Jing to leave. Jing Minyao, don't blame me for not warning you. If you let that little girl have one more lash mark on her body, with Arbor's ruthless temperament, he will definitely make 10 or 100 times more lash marks on your body. Although Jing Minyao watched Jing Linyao leave with cold eyes, her heart trembled slightly for no reason. When she turned around and met Jolin's angry big eyes, Jing Minyao felt a wave of nausea in her heart. She waved her hand and said, watch her carefully. Then, he strode out of the tent. Jing Qiao turned around and looked at Jolin curiously before following him out. Third sister. Where did you catch this kid? It's none of your business. Jing Minyao flew into a rage out of humiliation and left. On the other side, Jing Linyao was escorted to a tent by several guards. Princess, please. Jing Linyao coldly stared at the guards in front of her, her face full of resentment. Do you think this is being loyal to your duty? Father didn't give you to her to do as she pleases. You're accomplices to a villain, helping her mess around. In the end, you'll only harm the lives of your entire clan. The guards looked at each other in dismay. Chapter 3397. Why aren't you telling us what's going on? Third Miss wasn't the one who caught the girl, one of the guards said. 2 days ago, when Third Miss went for a walk in the Haegu district, a black-clothed man suddenly appeared and threw the girl to Third Mississippi. That man also said that he ran into someone sent by Captain Jing to investigate on Seacone Planet in the lower star zone. The men sent by Guard Commander Jing have all been killed. The guard spilled the beans like a bamboo tube. He made a prompt decision to capture the Crown Princess' younger sister. That's why he was able to escape in such a dangerous situation. We also felt that this matter was very strange. However, when Third Miss heard that the girl was the younger sister of the Crown Princess of the Divine Province, she insisted on doing it and didn't listen to anyone's advice at all. Our spies in the imperial capital of the Divine Province should have already made their move. What move? Jing Linyao suddenly had a bad premonition and her entire body tensed up. The guard lowered his head and whispered, "Yesterday, I heard that Third Miss sent the spy in the imperial capital to deliver a letter to the Crown Princess." Jing Linyao's eyes widened in shock and she immediately walked out of the tent. The guards hurriedly stopped her and said with shame, "Princess Jing, I'm sorry. We can't disobey Third Miss orders." Jing Linyao naturally knew that Outstanding Talent Camp only obeyed the orders of the person holding the tablet. Now that the tablet was in Jing Minyao's hands, the people of Outstanding Talent Camp would only listen to her orders. Jing Linyao nodded and clenched her fists. She said coldly, "I know you have your difficulties, but you have to believe me. If you don't let me out to make arrangements, the Aurora Desert will be destroyed overnight. All the members of the Pangu clan will be annihilated." She knew the young crown princess too well. When they first met in Shuntian Prefecture, the young crown princess was determined to execute Jing Minyao with her own hands. The crown princess had never been a kind person. An eye for an eye. The crown princess definitely wouldn't let any of them off since Jing Minyao, this idiot, had kidnapped her younger sister. She had to go out and arrange everything. Chi Yibu, she couldn't imagine it. It was as if she could already see a sea of blood and corpses in front of her. Princess Jing. The guards looked at each other and hesitantly reached out to stop her. "Believe me. If you don't let me out now, it'll be too late." Jing Linyao snapped. "If anything happens, I'll take responsibility." The guards looked at each other. Because of Princess Jing's prestige in the clan, they didn't dare to stop her and withdrew their hands at the same time. Jing Linyao got out of the tent and sent a signal to the sky. This was a signal to Jing Jia. Although her father was not very reliable, Jing Linyao knew that only when her father came back as soon as possible could they stop the war that was about to start. Jing Minyao came out of her tent and pointed at Jing Linyao with a face full of resentment. "Arrest her." Hundreds of Outstanding Talent Camp's guards rushed up and fought with the dozens of guards that came out from Jing Linyao's side. The scene was a bit chaotic. The tent was torn apart and several stoves that were placed outside the tent fell down one after another. The fire started to spread and accidentally set Jolin's tent on fire. Jing Linyao's expression changed greatly. She hurriedly shouted, "Go save her." Chapter 3398. At the same time, at Rouge Pavilion in Dragon Flame City. Arbor was already waiting in the lobby of Rouge Pavilion before it was even evening. Hui Feng quickly walked in and whispered something into the Crown Prince's ear. Prince Mo nodded and turned to look at Arbor. He held her small hand and said softly, "Everything has been arranged. We can leave immediately." Miss Chow nodded expressionlessly and spat out two words from between her teeth, "No hurry." The shopkeeper of Rouge Pavilion was hiding behind the counter. He felt a burst of cold air above his head and couldn't help but shiver. Ever since the two distinguished guests brought in a group of black-clothed guards, the people in the store all ran out of the store tactfully. Although the young guard gave him a small bag of spirit coins and told him not to worry about it and to leave on his own, the shopkeeper still felt uneasy in his heart, as if something bad was about to happen. He chose to stay as long as the shop was still there and the people were still there. Right now, Xiao Mu was not in the mood to care about the thoughts of irrelevant people. She held a flower cup in her hand, which emitted a faint cracking sound. Although no expression could be discerned from her face, she was abnormally furious on the inside, wanting to slaughter all of her enemies. These people were truly extraordinarily bold to dare go to the lower star sector to mess with her family. Good, very good. Since that was the case, she would let them clearly know the price they would have to pay for messing with her family. Hui Feng lifted the curtain and walked inside. His sharp gaze met the crown prince's, and he gave a slight nod as he stepped to the side a couple of steps. A tall and sturdy man walked in with 3 or 4 attendants. Upon seeing the young crown princess, a smile appeared on that man's face. He laughed loudly and said, I've kept the crown princess waiting. This must be His Highness the Crown Prince. Cut the crap. Arbor coldly interrupted him. What conditions does the Panga clan want before you're willing to let them go? Speak. The burly man's expression changed slightly, and he chuckled awkwardly. What are you saying, Crown Princess? What is our relationship with the Panga clan? The little Crown Princess raised her hand slightly, and Hui Feng clapped his hands, ordering someone to carry out the honest man from the Panga clan and throw him in front of the brawny man. Is this your companion? The muscular man's face changed slightly, and he looked up at Arbor in disbelief. This person was actually captured by them. How was this possible? Also, the man had revealed his identity as a member of the Panga clan. You're called Karkwin, right? Arbor looked at him coldly. She moved her fingers, and the flower cup was crushed into powder in her palm. Have you thought about how you will die? Karkwin's face slightly changed. His pupils couldn't help but shrink. After a while, the shopkeeper sent off the group of nobles with trepidation and received a small bag of spirit coins. He thanked them with tears of gratitude. Arbor ordered his men to bring Karkwin and his men onto 7th Swallow's back. 500 purple forest guards were also with them. The Aurora Sand Ground was 90,000 kilometers away from the border city. With little 7 speed, it would take 7 to 8 days to get there. Arbor used the teleportation glyph array. After the glyph energy was depleted, she had little 7 carry them for a while. After the glyph energy was replenished, they continued to teleport. Just like that, everyone arrived at Clear Pass City outside the Aurora Sand Ground after a day. This city was the border between the Divine Land and the Aurora Sand Ground. Clear Pass City was very close to the Aurora Sand Ground. Even though it was called Clear Pass, it didn't feel fresh at all. The sandstorm here was extremely strong. Walking on the streets, there were people with headscarves hurriedly walking. Chapter 3399. There weren't many stalls on the streets either. After all, with such a strong sandstorm, they would only eat dust if they were placed on the streets. The most unique thing about Clear Pass City was that there were all kinds of mud kiln shops. These small shops built from mud sold medicinal herbs, talismans, and weapons. The entire street was filled with such small shops, and it looked quite prosperous. However, all the merchants who frequented this place knew that the prices of Clear Pass City's goods were not cheap. It could be said that the goods in Clear Pass City were more expensive than those in the nearby cities, but the goods were only average. Therefore, although the street was bustling with activity, the business was just a so-so. It was fine to fool the foreign visitors, but the locals basically did not buy anything. On the other hand, the Panga clansmen would occasionally come to Clear Pass City to exchange for goods, so they were quite familiar with each other. Arbor's group of a few hundred people walking on the streets of Clear Pass City was naturally very eye-catching. She had someone release Karkwin and the others, and they led the way. It was not easy to find the right path in the Aurora Desert and the vast sea of sand. Arbor could send the little butterflies out to find it, but it would take some time. Finding a local to lead the way was the fastest way. When City Lord Huang of Clear Pass City heard the news and rushed over, Arbor had already found a local who could lead the way. City Lord Huang hurriedly knelt down and bowed, saying in fear and trepidation, "Your subject greets the Crown Prince and Crown Princess." "I did not know that the Crown Prince and Crown Princess had come to Clear Pass. Please forgive me for not coming out to meet you. We were just passing by," Mo Lien said indifferently, raising her hand to signal the middle-aged guide to come over. "This is your citizen. We need him to lead us to the Pangu clan's territory." "Yes, yes." City Lord Huang nodded, but he was a little confused. "Your Highness, you are going to the Pangu clan too. You don't have to worry about this." Mo Lien interrupted him, taking out an imperial token and waving it in front of him. "Transfer the border guards here. I will be in charge of them for the next 3 days." "Yes." City Lord Huang did not dare to say no. He nodded and hurriedly ordered his men to do it. Arbor turned to look at Mo Lien and tugged at his sleeve. "Then I'll take them away first." Mo Lien nodded and stroked her hair. Although he knew that there wouldn't be any danger on this trip, he still reminded her, "Be careful. If you encounter any unforeseen circumstances, just wait for me to come and deal with it." "All right." Arbor nodded. He raised his hand to summon his fire phoenix, and the 500 purple forest guards leapt onto it. At this time, Ka Kuen's face was already ashen, extremely defeated. Ever since he found out that the Crown Princess and her entourage only took slightly more than a day to travel from the imperial capital to Border City, he had been in a state of confusion. The girl in front of him was simply terrifying. Deep down in Karkin's heart, he had a bad premonition. He seemed to be absent-minded. "I'm asking you a question." One of the purple forest guards shoved Kakin. "Why aren't you talking?" When Ka Kuen came back to his senses, he found that everyone was standing on a sandy ground. Arbor had already put the fire phoenix away. This place was filled with rolling sand and dust. Flying at high altitudes was not very suitable. It would be too troublesome for the fire phoenix. Furthermore, the guide said that it would take no more than 6 hours to reach the Pangu clan's territory. Arbor decided to travel by land. The little fellow swallowed a flight pill and followed the guide expressionlessly. Chapter 3400. The little girl took out a large scarf and wrapped it around herself from head to toe, then floated behind the guide. At first glance, she looked like a spirit, causing the purple forest guards' mouths to twitch uncontrollably. The guide's name was Kiki, and he was a straightforward middle-aged man. Every time he wanted to talk to the little crown princess, he would turn around and see a cold, expressionless face. He instantly had the urge to not talk to the young crown prince consort anymore. The little girl's legs were off the ground, and her body was motionless as she floated behind him. It was a frightening sight. Kiki felt lucky that it was still daytime. If it was nighttime, he would have been scared to death. The purple forest guards all put on thin armor and followed behind the little crown princess. They walked for about 5 hours without saying a word. Kiki couldn't help but say, "Crown Princess, there's a quicksand area ahead. You all need to be careful." After saying that, he couldn't help but want to roll his eyes. The little crown princess had been floating the entire time. She wasn't in danger of being sucked into the quicksand at all. "How much longer until we reach?" "We'll reach it once we pass through the quicksand area," Kiki said. "Everyone, follow me. Don't wander off." Arbor continued to float behind Kiki. He turned to the purple forest guards and asked, "Do you want to come to the talisman?" The purple forest guard captain couldn't help but twitch his mouth. He shook his head and said, "No need, Crown Princess. They weren't that weak. What should they do?" The little crown princess was always worried that they would die, so she kept trying to hide them in the talisman. Arbor said, "Oh." He floated for a while, then lowered his head and said to Kiki, "Uncle Kiki, I'll put you in a storage talisman later." Don't worry, we'll let you out once we're done with the Panga clan. Kiki didn't quite understand, but he still nodded. Along the way, Kiki had some understanding of the little crown princess mystique. When Xiao Mu saw the continuous stretch of tents in the distance, she narrowed her eyes and gazed at the thick wall of sand outside the camp. The wall of sand was piled up by 100 years of wind and sand. It was about 10 meters tall and surrounded the entire territory of the Panga clan. On one hand, it could fend off the sandstorm, and on the other hand, it could fend off some beasts in the sand. It was just that this kind of living environment, compared to Clear Pass City, was still very unsightly. Jing Linyao had always wanted to enter the Divine Prefecture. It was also because of the continuous sinking of the desert in recent years. Chances were that, in a few years, the entire Aurora Desert would collapse. By then, the Panga clan would not even have a place to live. Kiki was very experienced. In less than 15 minutes, he had led the purple forest guards out of the quicksand area. He pointed at a nearby wall of sand and said, "Over there." Arbor nodded and put Kiki into the storage talisman, temporarily throwing him into the inner world. "You can come out now." Following the little stoic's voice, several figures suddenly appeared behind her. Ma Ta, Ko Hongwen, Qi Xianxian, Situ Yi, Liang Qingqing. The purple forest guards all widened their eyes. They should have thought of it earlier. The crown princess must have brought a lot of people with her since she possessed a treasure like a storage talisman. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's figure flashed. He waved a pink little fan and said with a grin, "Ah, the sandstorm here is really strong. This venerable one's eyes are red from the wind." Chapter 3401. As he spoke, the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal tugged at the little stoic scarf. "Jojo, why are you wrapping yourself up so tightly? I can't even see the little stoic's face anymore. Come quickly, lend me a small piece to cover my face." Because the sandstorm was unbearably strong, Arbor then covered her small face with 2 or 3 scarves, revealing a pair of bright, rolling eyes that were as cold as ice. The more the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal looked at her, the more interested he found her. He couldn't resist teasing this little girl. After snatching a scarf to cover his face, the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal quietly asked, "Jojo, are we going to charge in and fight now?" Arbor shook her small head and solemnly gazed at the camp behind the sand wall. "Why are we still wasting words with them? Let's charge in and capture the main culprit and give her a death by 1,000 cuts. I'm sure she'll be willing to hand over Jojo's younger sister." The peony fairy flipped a strand of her hair flirtatiously and slandered with a chuckle. Arbor raised her hand and expressionlessly blocked this group of fellows who wanted to charge into the camp. She raised her hand slightly, and countless light gray little sand scorpions abruptly flowed out from between her fingers. They rustled as they crawled in the sand. Little by little, they accumulated into an ocean, and gradually, they densely covered the sky and earth like a sea of scorpions, enclosing half of the entire camp. The peony fairy's scalp tingled as she watched. She reflexively took a small step back and coughed. Fuck, charging in to capture people and beat them to death was a more humane method of punishment, right Jojo? This guy didn't want to do anything at all. He first surrounded them with sand scorpions, then he would definitely take the next step. He was angry, he was angry. Sir Jojo must be very angry right now. Everyone took a small step back in unison. Only the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal moved 2 inches closer to Xiao Mu while waving his pink little red fan. He winked and said with a smile, "People will definitely flee outside in a while. Let's use vines to circle around the sand wall." Arbor had the same idea. She turned to look at him and nodded vigorously. Ma Yingqian raised her hand and a wood spirit shot out, landing on the towering sand wall in front of her. Soon, the wood spirit formed a winding vine and began to take root and sprout, spreading in all directions. Everyone felt as if a visual feast had appeared in front of them. This was the power of a transcendent god to control the 5 spirits. The originally slow-growing vines, with the help of Xing Chen's saint energy, rapidly extended their branches and leaves, covering the sky and covering the earth, rapidly spreading out outside the earthen wall. With an incomparable suppressive force, it circled the entire camp several times and extended into the sky. After only 15 minutes, the entire territory of the Pangu clan was enshrouded in vines. The tiny sand scorpions crawled in through the gaps in the vines. More and more of them swarmed in. When the people in the territory of the Pangu clan realized that something was wrong, most of them were too scared to come out of their tents. The intertwining vines as thick as the mouth of a bowl propped up a giant roof in the territory of the Pangu clan, covering the sky and the sun. As for the soldiers who were patrolling outside the tents, when they realized that something was wrong, they quickly ran toward 3rd Miss Jing's tent. On the way, they encountered a large number of sand scorpions and were forced into a bitter battle. There was no lack of cultivators among the soldiers, but most of them were low-level spiritual masters. The defense and attack of each of these tiny sand scorpions were comparable to that of a level 6 spiritual master. Chapter 3402. Although their levels were not high, they were enough to deal with most of the guards. Moreover, they were so dense that they covered the sky and the earth, giving people a feeling of fear at first glance. Arbor pursed her lips and looked coldly at the Pangu clan's land. Her voice was crisp and cold, like spring water dripping from a snowy mountain, every word smashing into the depths of people's hearts. Patriarch of the Jing family, come out. Jing Linyao, who was imprisoned in a tent and anxiously wiping the face of a girl on the bed, subconsciously shrank her fingers when she heard Arbor's voice. His eyes immediately revealed a look of shock. She rushed to the entrance of the tent, only to see an overwhelming number of sand scorpions crawling in the clan's land. Some soldiers resisted but were immediately swept into the sand scorpions and drowned into pieces. However, if they did not fight with the sand scorpions would not bite them wantonly. Instead, they drove the Pangu soldiers to an open space. A guard of the Pride camp ran in a panic and hurriedly said, "Princess, it's not good. Strong enemies are invading. What should we do now?" Jing Linyao was already shocked beyond words. She knew very well that it would take the fastest flying beast 7 or 8 days to reach the Pangu clan's land from Dragonflame City. But the crown princess arrived in 2 days. What was going on? She turned to look at Jolin, who was lying motionless on the bed, and frowned. Ever since the day of the fire, Jolin had been hit by Jing Minyao when she struggled to escape and was severely injured. She had been in a coma for the past 2 days. Jing Linyao wanted to wake the girl up, but she had fed her all kinds of medicine, but it was not very effective. She even asked the witch doctor to check on Jolin, but the answer she got was that the girl was likely to die. It was obvious how heavy Jing Minyao's slap was. After all, one was a little girl who had not even reached the spiritual realm, while the other was a level 3 divine master. The difference in strength was too great. Jing Linyao took a deep breath and turned to look at the soldier. "Father, have you arrived?" The latter shook his head. Jing Linyao quickly walked to the bed and helped Jolin up. The curtain of the tent was suddenly lifted up high by someone and then lowered down. Jing Minyao spun in front of Xiao Lin like a storm, grabbed Xiao Lin's wrist and shouted at the pale-faced guards behind her, "Drag her out." "Jing Minyao, what are you doing?" Jing Linyao was so angry that she hurriedly reached out to stop her. If it wasn't for this brainless person courting death like this, how could the entire clan have fallen into such a state? "It's none of your business." Min, Madam Jing, Wang Liming, ran into the tent in a panic. Pointing at the sand outside, she said with a frightened face, "Outside, there are scorpions outside." "What's going on?" "Your good daughter has captured the younger sister of the crown princess of Shenzhou. Now that she has brought people to attack us, she still refuses to admit defeat and wants to continue to cause trouble." Madame Jing looked at her daughter in shock. "Min, is it true?" Her gaze fell on the unconscious Xiao Lin on the bed. "It's her." "Mother, don't get involved in this matter." "How can mother not get involved? How many more people do you want to kill with your willfulness?" Jing Qiao angrily followed them in. She lifted the tent flap and let them see the sand scorpions that blotted out the sky and covered the earth. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.